So I guess you'll just have to go without it.
We'll just do it the old way.
Okay.
Fine with me.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Dudley Planning Board meeting for December 8th, 2021. We have a full board present this evening. The full board is Richard Clark, Vice Chairman, Steve Waitroba, Clerk of the Board, Thomas Chinaki, Member, Daniel Edmiston, Member, our Town Planner, William Scanlon, and myself, Guy Horn, Chairman. First item on our agenda for this evening is approval of minutes from October 13th and November 10th. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
Chairman, I would move that we accept the October 13, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
We have a motion for October 13th. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
Mr. Chairman, can I just add that the minutes, we had a long meeting, there were a lot of detail in there, and I think everything was captured very well, very accurately. Appreciate it.
Would somebody like to make a motion for the November 10th meeting minutes?
That's fine.
Chairman, I'd like to move that we accept the November 10, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
We have a motion for the November 10th meeting minutes. Would somebody like to second it?
I can second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
I have copies of both started.
Oh, he's got two.
Second item on our agenda for this evening, A&R plans. We don't have any this evening. So we go to the third item, minor site plan review, discussion of water treatment plant, Dudley Water Department, Schofield Ave.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Timothy Grace, and I work with Ty and Bond. We're here tonight to talk to you or in support of the minor site plan application that we submitted on behalf of the Water Department for the PFAS water treatment plant. As you all know, PFAS was detected in wells 3 and 7. It was above the PFAS 6, the state level. Well 8 is near that level, and then well 6 is below the threshold, but there was still PFAS found in that well. So obviously there's a need for a PFAS water treatment plant. There's also a water main project that's high-level part of this work, but it's not included in this application. It's not technically part of the water treatment plant. So it's located at 12 Boston Road. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's where Potash Brook is. We picked that location because it's centrally located to all the other wells, so it would minimize the amount of water main that had to be run to all the different sources to interface with that plant. So the site is currently, there's an abandoned pump station there now, pump station number 4, and then there's an active pump station number 6, and the water treatment plant area is basically currently a maintained lawn. There's a gravel driveway and turnaround, but for the most part, the parcel's undeveloped. It's, for the record, it's map 124, lot 30, and it's an 18.5 acre parcel. Sorry, I'm pulling my notes up. Like I mentioned before, it's an 18.5 acre parcel. It's currently owned by the town. The parcel falls within the Groundwater Aquifer Protection District. For this project, we're anticipating about 2 acres worth of disturbance. And the site is actually located within 3 zone districts: the general residential district, the business district, and the single family residential district. And basically what we're proposing is a 4,400 square foot prefab metal building, 4,400 gross square footage, and directly adjacent to the existing pump station on the site. Would it be helpful if I page through the plans?
If you wouldn't mind, that'd be great. Where's the best location to locate the, right there?
Just take a little bit. Okay. So this is our proposed conditions plan. As you can see, the building is located directly adjacent to the existing pump station that's right there. The only other things we're really proposing here are we're formalizing the driveway. Like I mentioned, there's a gravel driveway there now. We're adding bituminous concrete to basically formalize it and so that it can accommodate the turning movements of the trucks that are expected to deliver there. Adjacent to the building, there's a concrete pad that's proposed for frac tanks. So during the for maintenance procedures at the plant, they basically backwash the system, and they're going to backwash the media and then the water that's in the filter vessels into those tanks where they can be hauled off site. Besides that, we're proposing a backup generator. There's a couple propane tanks on the site. Stormwater is handled via the bioretention areas. We did have the project peer reviewed by Graves Engineering, and they offered comments. We responded to their comments and haven't heard anything back yet. The basins are basically planted with native pollinator-friendly species so that all the stuff we're adding in there's no invasives or anything like that, and it'll pose a significant upgrade to the site now because there really isn't any stormwater management at the property as it is. Water just kind of flows off the site into the surrounding wetlands. So that'll be a significant upgrade for the site as well. And Conservation heard this project tonight, so just for your records, we are in front of the Conservation Commission and we were continued. And I think that's about it. If the board has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Could you just orientate us where the road is and the
Yes,
driveway is? on
exactly.
this
I'm sorry. So New Boston Road is right here.
plan?
This is there's a gravel drive you can see right here
Okay,
that loops around the site. But yes, so on this plan to the right is where New Boston Road is. Potash Brook is right here, and then existing pump station is right there. We're basically locating the building directly adjacent to the existing pump station.
will this facility be enclosed with a fence? Is it now enclosed with a fence, or will it be after the construction?
Both. There's a fence there now, and there's going to be one post-construction as well.
And you also mentioned that the driveway was going to become asphalt or blacktop, so that the trucks that would need to deliver there, what will they be delivering, and how frequently will they be delivering?
So it would probably be monthly. It really depends on how quickly the chemicals are used. I believe the two chemicals are potassium hydroxide and sodium hypochlorite. There's no transfer outside of the truck. Basically, the trucks pull up and they connect hoses from the truck to the building itself, so it's not like they're offloading drums of chemicals or anything like that.
Okay. And if any of these chemicals were to spill, there's mechanisms in place to capture this?
Yes, so that's one of the good things about formalizing the stormwater management system, is that there is a means where if something did happen, there are areas where it would be collected and it could be disposed of before it infiltrated.
Any other board members have questions?
Tim, you mentioned pollinator species in the
Correct.
stormwater basin.
Correct.
Can you explain how that's maintained over time?
So one of the nice things about using native, adaptive, pollinator-friendly species is that there really isn't a ton of maintenance associated with them. Maybe once a year, the water department could go in there and hack things back if they wanted to, but in general, the reason we spec the plants that we spec in these areas is so that there really isn't a lot of maintenance for those things. Like I said, if they wanted to, they could go in there and do maintenance, but everything will still thrive even if they do not.
Won't you have to go in and clean out sediment occasionally, though? And
Depending on how much accumulates, yes. But in general, we find these basins, because of the way they're designed, they don't clog. They capture the sediment, but it isn't something that requires even monthly maintenance. Again, we're talking like once a year.
okay.
Would there be any additional lighting added to the facility for this building?
So we are proposing basically wall packs. So lights that when personnel have to go there in the middle of the night for an emergency, it'll illuminate the area right in front of them. But we're not proposing formal, like parking lot lighting that you'd see at like a Walmart or a supermarket or something like that. Just the bare minimum so that personnel have safe access to the building in the middle of the night.
And the generator that you mentioned, is it gonna be propane or diesel?
Correct, propane.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you improving the crossing over the stream?
We think we are. So we talked about doing that work with the water department. I'm not actually 100% sure where we are in that process, but I do imagine that there is going to be some improvements to the access road.
Is there a need for it, or is it just something you want to do to?
No, there's definitely a need.
Okay.
The storm events this year showed us that there could be some improvements made to the access road, but that isn't part of this project. That would be a future project.
Okay.
And the driveway currently, is it lighted or not lighted?
I don't believe it is. I don't think there's anything.
Okay. And you won't be lighting it?
No, we don't have plans to light it.
Okay. So from the street, basically no changes?
Essentially, yep.
I thought the report was thorough and well-written, so no questions on my part.
Mr. Chairman, my only question would be, for the town planner, are we satisfied that all of the changes that were required by Graves Engineering have been completed on this plan?
It looked like it to me. It looked like they had addressed all of the concerns that Graves had. I haven't heard back from them.
Guy's
so-
name is spelled correctly on the cover page?
It is.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
All right.
Is there any action we have to take this evening on this?
This is a minor site plan approval, so it does require a vote of the planning board. It'd be a simple majority vote to approve.
Okay.
Mhm. So it requires a motion, obviously.
Yes.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the minor site plan review as presented this evening from the Dudley Water Department, Schofield Ave.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous? We're all set?
Great. Thank you very much.
Sorry about the
Oh, that's okay.
technology.
Do we need a second copy of the minutes for the 10th and the 13th?
Sure.
Oh, you only have one? I thought you had one of
You have
each.
another one there?
I can find one real fast.
I can take
I've
it
got
out.
one for the 10th. I'll get it for the 13th too.
All right.
Good night.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the minutes taken care of. Minor site plan review. Next thing on our agenda is a 7:15 continuation of a public hearing for Stevens Mill, so we've got about 25 minutes before that can begin. Bill, would you like to go through some of these other items on the agenda so we can take them out of
Sure.
order?
Yes.
So let's jump down to the standard business, I guess. Discussion, status report on finishing, actually, that's gonna come up. Oh, that's it, that's at number 5, okay. Discussion, status report on finishing construction of and acceptance of unaccepted subdivision streets, including Pierpont Estates, Rocky Hill Estates, Piasta Road, Country View Estates, Eisenhower Drive, Tobin Farms Estates, Lyons Estates. Do we have anything under that topic?
So, several of the board members went out to Piastra Road to participate in the site inspection for the completion of the road. Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering submitted his report on the completeness of the road, which you have in tab F.
Yep.
Do any of you that attended the meeting have any particular comments or concerns? Jeff identified a number of issues that needed to be addressed. Looks like 6 altogether. We then received, I received an email from Jonathan Androlevich dated 12/1, where he discussed the work that they've done sort of in advance of receiving Jeff's letter, or I guess in response to Jeff's letter. So it looks like they are taking steps to correct whatever issues need to be addressed before, winter sets in. You also have the as-built and acceptance plans for the project. Jeff had reviewed those and had some questions about some of the items that needed to be addressed. So we're waiting, I think, for the revised plans based on Jeff's review of the as-built plans. So I think we're in pretty good shape then to bring this project forward for town meeting approval and for the board to sign off on it, on the completeness of the subdivision, which I think would be probably the next step once we get word from Jeff that he's satisfied with all the items that he identified. I think we could bring it back to the board for sign off on the project.
And was the, was Ramco thinking that they were gonna have this all done this year, or is it gonna be something
It's
that
their
they-
intent to bring it forward to at the annual town meeting
which is January,
in May.
May? But they would have the work done in 21 or 22?
I think everything was pretty much done.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, there were, in particular, the catch basin sump pumps need to be cleaned, and that was work to be performed on the 29th of November.
Mhm.
I don't know, do we have anything here indicating that was accomplished?
It did, yes.
yeah,
In
okay.
Jonathan's email.
And another one was the brush issue, and that was to be, occur on the 18th of November, so I'm assuming that that also has been completed. Excuse myself, I should probably have driven by to
Mhm.
verify that, but that looked like, as of that date, Mr. Chinaki and I were there, it looked like those issues were going to be addressed in
Mhm.
short order.
What about those, something, is it mentioned here about drilled holes, bounds, something on right of ways?
It's set, yeah.
Yeah, drilled holes on the boundaries. but
So
they-
that's yet to be done?
He said he was gonna do that the same day we were there.
That's not referenced in his email.
It's very easy to see though, if somebody goes out, we can just check it, because the concrete, usually they put a concrete or a granite bounds in and then they drill a hole on
Granite,
top.
Granite. They're
The
just gonna
granite?
drill the holes, yeah.
Yeah.
Just, what do we have here to indicate that that's been accomplished or completed?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say.
So I can get verification from Graves Engineering that everything has
Those
been
things are-
completed.
It-
And then I think the board would be reasonable to sign off on the project.
Sounds good.
Did in fact sound good, and it looked good as of that date, thank you.
And then we would just sponsor that for the Springtown meeting.
Right.
Yes, they have submitted to the Board of Selectmen to have the street accepted. So they are intending to go forward with that.
All right. That's good, it'll be one more off the list.
Indeed.
Anything else about any of the other subdivisions on that list?
Well, we're going to be talking about Tobin Farm later, so I guess
Right.
we'll hold off on that for now.
Okay. So we want to move on to the number 2, under standard business, recap of the Board of Selectmen meeting on private roads.
I put that on the agenda just in case you wanted to follow up with that discussion. Some of the board members weren't there. We covered a lot of territory. I just was curious as to what your reaction was to that meeting and if you had any thoughts about going forward.
I mean, I think the only thing that I see that, if I was a homeowner in this situation, as some of the people in town are in a subdivision that's not approved, the only way that it was gonna get approved was if the homeowners had to contribute to paying for the completion. Yeah, I mean, I think the betterment's a good idea, but I would look into seeing if there was a way to do it without having the town be in charge of it, because paying prevailing wage to get that additional work done is gonna be significantly higher than if the homeowners just got together and hired a reputable local contractor to do the work and get it done and get it approved by the town engineer.
Getting them together is the key there, and that's the problem in some of these situations.
But
All
you
you
need-
need is one holdout.
You need them together to have the betterment, don't you?
No, we only need
50%
50%.
linear.
Yeah, 50%.
50%?
Yeah.
Come on, Mr. Chairman, didn't you watch the
I
meeting?
didn't watch that. I started at the beginning of it.
I watched it twice, and I still am not clear on some of the.
Okay.
So the other issue is, if you go through the town process, you can finance that cost over time through a betterment. If you were to hire a private contractor, they'd want to be paid immediately,
Mhm.
so everybody would have to pony up their share of the cost.
Every case is gonna be on an individual basis, but I think I would just look at it as that, you know.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think we have in town what might constitute a worst-case scenario if we look to Misty Meadows and the situation that exists there in terms of the road having deteriorated. I don't think any of these other pending subdivisions want to find themselves in that situation. And that will happen if action is not taken. I mean, those roads are not going to stay in the condition that they are in terms of Tobin Farms 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. Something, they're going to get worse. I mean, it's the nature of where we are in New England. And if folks involved don't want to do something, be it private contractor or through the betterment process, that's their future. And if they're not sure what that looks like, then I suggest they might want to drive down Misty Meadow.
And I think unfortunately in Misty Meadows' case, you're gonna, the situation there is gonna be even more exacerbated by, there's not all the lots were built upon, so there's even less people to finance the repair of the road.
Well, but the lot owner, even if it's not built upon, would still be.
Right, but the major stakeholder
assessed.
is the resident.
Right.
They've got the most skin in the
I mean,
game.
if you're a lot owner and you don't care about building anything on that property, you're not gonna really care what state the road's in.
So one of the participants at that meeting suggested the town form a committee to address a number of these private road issues throughout town. I was curious as to your thoughts about whether you thought that was a good idea and/or whether you would be willing as a board to participate in that process.
I can't speak for the whole board, but I think it's a good idea. And I would think that it would be a better board if they could have at least one person from the planning board on it to give them some help and direction with road specifications and things that need to be done.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think that certainly is a good idea. I think that the success of that committee would be, I think the requirement for the success of that committee would be participation of the residents, though.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add that I had already spoken with the town planner and said that if such a committee was formed, that I would be willing to volunteer as the member from the planning board unless someone else has thoughts.
Well, there can be more than one member of the planning board if they're
Sure.
interested, so it's not.
I would volunteer as well, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
So I think
If where to come.
you have your answer. There's multiple members willing to volunteer.
Okay. I think it's really the selectmen's prerogative to form that committee, but I'll let them know that if they do so, you'd be interested in participating.
Yep.
Excuse me, can I just address the board for a second on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Jerry Frank from Causeway Road in Dudley. I was previously on the planning board, so I've had a few people, way back, but a few people asked me about this issue because I was on the planning board when this was a problem a long time ago. And so the question I wanted to know, aside from going through this process that the selectmen have proposed, the other process is just for the people on the road, just to petition the town meeting to accept the road as it is, and have the town, then it would be the town meeting could just accept the road, and the town would just at their cost,
Well, I guess.
would bring it up to par. So I just wanted to know, is this in conflict? Would this in any way be a conflict with the work that the planning board is doing with other subdivisions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, excuse me, are you finished, sir, or am I interrupting you?
No, go ahead.
All right. As I recall, and my recollection is not always perfect, at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, that thought was presented, and I believe that the town administrator indicated that the moderator would rule that out of order, that you could not propose acceptance at the town meeting from the floor or by citizen's petition.
To follow up on that, there was a state law that governs street acceptance procedures. And I
Saw
don't
that
think you can
today.
ignore that.
I don't remember the number, but there's actually a Mass General law that prohibits that kind of action. It was a court case. I don't remember the,
So that's not an option, is what you're saying?
No.
I think that's what
no,
I know.
because if that were to work,
Everyone will do it.
then it would negate the planning board and subdivision
And the bylaws?
regulations, complete bylaws. You could throw
Bylaws.
them all out. Anybody could just go and build a development. So, I own a bulldozer, I'm gonna put a road in, I'm gonna sell off house lots, and then I'm just gonna go to town meeting and get it accepted.
Well, town meeting wouldn't doesn't have to necessarily accept it.
Well, if the town meeting doesn't accept it, then it's not a public way, and
Yeah.
it goes back to being a private way, which is what you're talking about now.
I think
What you
the
were just asking
yeah, the
about was
concern
good-
is that, the people who live in these developments, and I'm not talking about the dirt roads, like I live on Causeway Road, which is a private road, so I'm not even suggesting that for something like this, but on those subdivisions, it was really the town who, didn't follow through with the bonds or whatever to get the road finished at some point. And the people who are living there are paying taxes, which basically are paying for the maintenance of all the roads in Dudley except for their own, which is really kind of absurd. So it just seems like it would be a good way to do it.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the initial failure here is the contractor that these folks have purchased their property from not following through.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think this is a perfect example of why there should be a committee, because these need to be taken on a case-by-case basis, because we're talking about such different situations.
Right.
We've got some developments that were actually subdivisions that happened after subdivision regulations. We've got some of these roads that they're talking about, they predate subdivision regulations, dirt roads, so to speak.
Yep.
And you've got, from what I saw at the selectmen's meeting, some of the people who came forward, they almost seemed like they didn't want to have their roads accepted, that they currently treat it like it's a private road, and that's what they would prefer it to stay that way. So we could find that out. You go through the whole, you put a committee together, you put together the list of the roads, you approach one at a time the residents of those roads, the ones that say, hey, we don't want it, take them off the list. You report back to the selectmen and say, we talked to
That
them,
would be the
they
case
don't
with
want
my
it.
road, for example. You're correct. We don't want our road accepted by the town.
Right. There is no one-size-fits-all.
Right. That's it, that's all I had to say on that.
Any other discussion from the public on that? Okay. Mr. Frank, would you please, do we have a sign-in sheet, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah, I typed it
You did? Okay, thank you very much. Next one on the agenda, inspections and actions associated with site plans. We have Legacy Landing, Country Club Acres. We have SEP Solar, Oxford Avenue, and we have J&D 24 Oxford Ave.
Mr. Chairman, you have some reports in your binder, and I sent them to you by email prior to the meeting. Just, for the TV audience, we have a site visit report from Graves Engineering on Legacy Landing, which is now known as Country Club Acres. Everything seems to be, moving along there well. Graves was there when paving was taking place. They identified a couple of minor issues that are identified on page 1 under the note section. But I don't think there's anything there that's significant in terms of failing to live up to the road standards that the road should be built to. So I think this report indicates that things are going along there pretty well. The second report you have is on Sep Solar. This is a solar project on Oxford Ave near the Oxford Town Line. And the engineer had prepared a decommissioning cost estimate for $210,435, which is intended to cover the cost of removing that installation and disposing of the solid waste. If the developer should not be able to remove the project when it was time to do so. The engineer our engineer has reviewed that estimate and concurs with that figure. So it's now up to the applicant to bring forward a decommissioning bond for that amount. And then once that's in place, we would have the pre-construction conference to go over the project with the contractor, and they'd be ready to start construction maybe this winter, if weather permitting, or as soon as weather does permit.
In spring, okay.
The third report you have is on JD&D, which is on is it 24 Oxford Avenue. They did make a site visit report to view the project and seemed to be satisfied that everything was being done properly.
If I may, getting back to the SEP Solar thing, that's a 20-year type lease, correct?
I don't know, we're not part of that lease. It would be with a private landowner, but typically that's what it is.
Okay. They don't have an agreement with the town then?
They have there is an agreement, a solar agreement with the town, yes.
My only thoughts are that we don't know what the regulations are going to be in 20 years as far as or getting rid of all that stuff, if it's be called hazmat or not, if the 2010 is going to be enough or not in 20 years. Is the planning board, does it have any authority to raise that amount, to recommend raising it?
Well, you have to approve the amount, and if you don't, then, I guess that leaves open the door to require something else, and I guess, I don't know how you come up with a different number. You could ask the applicant to revise his calculations based on what you suggest.
Okay, so that takes care of the 3 site plan reviews, or the 3 site visits, I should say. We're getting close to our 7:15 continuation of the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Is there something else that we can take?
This route will take too long.
So number 4, acceptance of Fish Road definitive plan subdivision and scheduled date for the public hearing. Is that a 5-minute topic?
It's just a couple minutes,
Yeah.
I think. So we did receive the definitive plan for Fish Road. If anybody would like to look at it, certainly it's your prerogative. I believe it's a complete application. So the exercise tonight is for you to accept the submission of the plan. According to your regulations, the plan is deemed submitted when it's presented to the planning board and so accepted by the board. So that's the simple activity tonight for you to agree that you've accepted the plan. And then that would start the clock for approval.
Okay.
And I think we would want to set the public hearing tonight for some future date so that we could get on the proper timeline.
So this is the, on Fish Road, this is the,
Download facility.
right, but this is the, this is the
Right.
building of the cul-de-sac that's going to continue and
Yes.
straighten out the.
You previously approved the preliminary plan for this project.
Right,
So this is basically the follow-up to that,
Okay.
to actually get the approval of the board for the definitive plan.
okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, to the planner, so, Bill, is it your understanding that the definitive plan is substantially similar to what we saw as a
Yes.
preliminary plan then?
Yes.
And could I ask you, is there any waivers requested on that definitive plan?
I haven't seen that yet, so I didn't see them,
Okay.
so I don't know for sure, but we could look, why don't we look at the plan?
Goes in front.
Tell you, and I can put one.
Thank you.
Oh, got a pound and a half of paper here. Killed another forest. There were waivers requested, we were looking for them. First page, what's that?
So I don't see a list of waivers requested.
All right. Mr. Chairman, in order to move things along, I would move that we accept the Fish Road definitive subdivision plan as submitted.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? Okay.
When would you like to set the public hearing for this project? You have on your, in your binder, two prepared schedule of planning board meetings.
Mhm.
It's on the cover. Okay. Typo.
Yeah.
So we have, the clock is ticking, so what's the timeframe on this?
65 days to hold the public hearing from tonight.
So conceivably, we could do it on the 26th of January?
That
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so why don't we put it down for the 26th of January?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you very much, Bill, for the calendar. Is there a chance we could get that, is that going to be on the website?
Yes.
Town website? Thank you.
So, we've just assumed the second and fourth Wednesdays,
Yeah.
even in November, December,
Yeah,
Right.
'cause
subject to change.
we can cancel those if it comes close to the holidays, like we're doing this year. Okay. So it's now just a little after 7:15, so we now have the continuation of a public hearing on the Stevens Mill redevelopment. Do we need to read the public hearing notice?
You don't need to read it again.
We don't need to read it again, okay.
I did get a handout tonight from Mary Palacios here this evening.
Okay,
I haven't had a chance to look at this yet, but I'll pass it around for you to.
thank you.
Does that help you as well?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, keep that for your records. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, the traffic engineer from VHB was not able to make it this evening, so I don't think it would be fair to talk about traffic impacts without him present. And we also do not have the board's peer review traffic consultant either, so I think we would continue the discussions on traffic impacts later on at a different meeting. We also do not have a revised set of plans from Bowler Engineering yet that we've talked about a number of different changes to that site plan, and so that hasn't been finalized yet. And I think Mr. Gumpert, John Gumpert, is here this evening to talk about the kinds of things that they're thinking about doing to the site plan. He wanted to come and present to you, the progress that they're making in addressing some of the concerns that came up at the previous meeting, and perhaps engage with the audience in terms of other issues or concerns that they might have.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the planning board. I did bring a plan which shows our really improvements from the last submission that we did. As Bill says, we don't have engineering drawings to back that up. This is just our progress that we've made so far, but we've made substantial progress in really reacting to the community's response to our initial submission. The biggest issue is the entrance and exit off Mill Street. We think we're going to be able to accomplish that, where prior to that we had not done that. We have added, we've got roughly 260 parking spaces now. We've expanded our parking some. In addition to that, we've got 41 overflow spaces that would be used by Tri-Valley or our use. So we're working with them, and we're still going back and forth on what the best arrangement will look like, but it's going to be very similar to what you see tonight. So I'm excited about that because I think we really address the community's concern about access to Mill Street and providing adequate parking, if not a little more, for both uses of Tri-Valley and for the Stevens Mill. Also, questions came up about trash, where we're going to put the trash container, how do you load people in and out of the mill, and we've established that. Additionally, we've gotten what I think is our final review, or at least a very substantial review back from the National Park Service, approving some of the additions to the building that we've proposed. And that was at our last meeting. We're in a little flux over that, and we feel like we've made some real progress with them. So tonight's presentation is just to give you a look at how we're addressing the issues that were brought up in the last meeting. And again, I have to say, Tri-Valley's been great to work with and has really allowed us to make some real improvements to the plans we showed before.
So this plan that you just dropped off for us, which is showing the changes for the parking, I'm guessing the pinkish, the purplish colored, is that the overflow parking?
That's the overflow parking.
So am I reading this map correctly? Is there some kind of building or something in that area right now that would be demolished? Or?
No, that was taken down by Tri-Valley some time ago.
Okay.
So it's just an empty lot now.
Okay.
And this allows Tri-Valley to have a completely separate parking lot from our use. And then both of us would share the shared parking as we need it.
Yeah, so you're proposing basically an additional entrance, an additional entrance north on Mill Street.
That's right. That's right. And I believe it will replace their existing entrance, but I've got to get with our traffic engineers to confirm that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Sure.
Glad to see that Mill Street is in play, thank you. The two entrances on Ardlock are still there as well.
Yes, they are.
I apologize, I can't read very much of this. I can detect I can discern the colors, but the print is just beyond me.
That's why I have the larger piece of paper.
Well, I congratulate you on your forethought on that.
Right.
You say conversation with Tri-Valley. Now, Tri-Valley does not own the property, is that correct?
No, they do own the parking lot that we're exiting
They do
out
own
of.
the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought there was a third party that they were involved with as far as,
So they're involved with that. I'm lumping all of them in together, but we're working together with them to establish that.
all right, thank you.
And you're gonna have deeded access through there,
Yes.
recorded? And I know Dunkin' Donuts, you guys were sharing their parking lot, is that?
I think
deeded?
they were sharing ours.
Oh, they were sharing yours?
That's
All
my
right.
understanding. But, you know, our traffic engineers have come up with the best way to share with Dunkin' Donuts, so I think we're
Yeah.
good there.
Huh?
How about visitor parking? Number of visitor parkings,
Right.
is that on here?
Well, the, everything in green is what's needed for the residents of Stevens Mill plus the commercial use. And that breaks out to roughly 235 residential spaces, another 25 commercial. And then the 40 or so overflow would cover anything that we needed and anything that they needed.
So you got only 25 for your commercial use
Right.
for a function hall, though?
Well,
What's
you
gonna
know,
be-
so.
What's gonna be a max occupancy in that building?
I don't know, honestly,
Well-
today, but that's kind of like, you know, designing a church for Easter Sunday.
Yeah, I know, but
Easter
yeah.
Sunday, you get all kinds, if we have a big event, you know, there will be cars there, but you don't have, you can't expect the apartments to be 100% capacity and the event center to be 100% capacity. And those 40 spaces, you know, if we had a big enough event for a townwide event,
Yeah, you got a
then
big
maybe
problem.
we would be overlapping onto Tri-Valleys. And if Tri-Valley had a big event of some kind, they may be overlapping into our space. So that's, you know, it's kind of how that looks to be. I'm excited about it. I mean, when we look at, from our internal needs, you know, what type of parking do you need? We typically say one per bedroom. Now, this project is primarily one bedrooms and studios with about 56 two bedrooms. So the majority of it's one bedroom. So we think our actual parking need will be below what's required. So we're not concerned about that.
Yeah, but one bedroom equals two people, in my opinion. You know, a husband and wife.
Two people, one car.
There's two cars.
Sometimes.
Figure that out, though.
Yeah, we haven't had an issue with that. We really haven't. And we
well,
typically have a higher mix of twos and threes. And in this instance, we have no threes, and we have 56 twos, I think.
Could I ask, like, are you gonna, if you were, let's say, a visitor coming to this complex to visit someone who lives there, and you park, let's say, in the purple area, in the overflow parking, where would you enter the building? Are there gonna be more than one entrance to this building?
There is more than one entrance. In fact, there are probably 4 entrances to the building. So
you could
you
enter,
you would really need to know who you're visiting and what's the best way to get to their unit.
but if you
And
didn't,
we'll have signage to show that.
okay, if you didn't know that, but you could still enter any one of those 4 entrances, and would there be like an intercom system or something so that they could get in touch with the?
We will likely have key fobs to prevent people from just walking into the building.
Okay,
So we will have security on the building itself. But we don't have gates, so you will be able to drive into the parking lot. And again, when you're doing an event center, you want people to get into the complex. It's not a gated community, if you will.
right.
But we will have security on certain floors and so forth.
Mr. Chairman, central location for deliveries, UPS, FedEx, things of that sort? Is
We
that-
do. We've got a loading dock, and that's where those will come in through. And I won't tell you that we've thought that completely out, but on all of our properties, because, you know, the central delivery is such a big part of everybody's life today, we'll have that in place.
Mr. Chairman, I had just a question here about this, the new overflow parking area. So at the last meeting, we had the director from Tri-Valley, she was here, and she confirmed that they don't own the building, lease it, correct? That's what my understanding was from the last meeting. So who owns the property that the overflow parking is on? Because that almost looks like it's two other lots there.
there's,
Yeah, Lisa said she has control over that. Now, exactly how, I can't tell you, but
So are you gonna work out some sort of a long-term lease agreement for this?
yes,
Okay,
yeah. We'll have an access agreement through it.
yeah.
We'll pay for the improvements.
I think the key here is that would have to be a long-term lease agreement that you would have to work out with the owner of the property.
Yeah, I suspect we'll have an access easement through it. So I don't know that we'll even be leasing it. I think we'll just have an
Well,
access.
what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at where this driveway is gonna exit out onto Mill Street.
Mhm.
That is on the lot or the parcel that Tri-Valley is on. And all of that parking adjacent to that is on two lots, two parcels that are adjacent to this larger parcel. So my question is, you actually, if you have an easement on that, on the main Tri-Valley property, actually, I shouldn't call it the Tri-Valley property, the property that Tri-Valley is on. If you have an easement there for the, to get through, that's one thing. But as far as the parking goes, that's actually on two other parcels.
Right, and so I don't have an answer for that, but I can assure you we'll work that out.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure you're aware that,
Right.
I can't speak for the whole board, personally, I would like to see some sort of a long-term lease agreement in place.
Okay,
Because we don't want a situation where you build the thing, 5 years down the road, if things go well for you and you get it fully rented out, all of a sudden you lose these parking spaces?
right.
Okay, so,
No, that's fair, and we'll make sure we document everything we're doing. And they've been great to work with, and I think they'll continue to be.
Mr. Chairman,
let's invite this person to come forward.
I have a question, John, on the two parking lots on the right side of this page. Are those connected, or can you not get through there?
No, they are connected.
Because it looks like there's a solid,
It does look that way, and I just think that was an error in the shading.
okay. So I think that would be important for fire access, to be able to drive around the.
You know, and it would just make it simpler for everybody.
Right, and especially for people that wanted to get to Mill Street.
Right.
Should be able to park in that lower lot and go through the parking lot rather than out onto our lot and up.
As one of the neighbors said, they're gonna figure out the best way to get in and out of the project, so.
And John, you mentioned that the National Park Service has, could you update us again on what their approval entails?
Well, you know, we go through the State Preservation Office as well as the National Park Service. It filters up to them. We had been operating under the assumption that we could add floors to certain parts of the mill. The Park Service came back and said, we don't want you doing that. Now, we've looked at it. So we proposed adding an additional wing to one of the buildings and not adding any floors to the building. And they've come back and said, yes, we like that much better. We approved the approach. Now we're going through on some of the materials, and we're gonna determine what you can do and not. And we're in that process.
And where is that building located here?
It's building 7. If you look at the building closest to the river, you can see it's a small building added to the end,
And how many stories?
3 stories,
And how many units?
21, I think.
Okay. So that would, you came in with 156 before, so we'd be at 156 plus 21?
No, we're 159,
Now you are?
yeah,
Okay,
and that's what we'll be.
okay.
How about your fire lanes are required by state law?
We will have all fire lanes, everything required for a new fire system and all the fire lanes, including an alarm system, sprinkler system.
It's time for 11 and running.
Mr. Chairman, I can't see this building.
No, I can't.
Is it the building that's just north of the pool?
No, I thought that was the event.
Yeah, that is the event. No, it's the other side to that. So if you look and see where the loading dock is,
Yep.
Yeah,
Where's that?
That's the building, facing the river from there.
So this building here.
Oh, that building.
This is looking at, right? Something
Yeah.
there.
oh, so this, oh, okay,
Oh,
this here.
all right.
Okay. Magnifying glass.
So why would the Parks Department care about you adding a floor to a building?
Historical preservation?
National Park Service cares about everything. I mean, they look at every detail, even on the interior of the building that
It's
we
on the
do.
National Register,
Yeah.
Historic places, it's all historic.
so you need
This
your
is-
approval.
But yeah, it's on the National Register, that's all the more reason to argue, why take up green space and add on a whole nother building that's gonna be,
It destroys the character of the
Uh,
historic nature of the building.
Yeah, they objected to putting an addition onto the roof line. So for example, they've come back and said, you want to put HVAC equipment on the roof, I don't think we're going to let you do that. We don't like the sight lines. So they literally critique every component of the redevelopment.
so how do you make the new building blend into a very?
You know,
old
it's like negotiating with you folks. We negotiate with the Park Service on every detail, and if they say, you know what, we have a strong objection to something, we listen to them and we adapt the plans to that. So it's really a give and take, and it works well. I mean, at the end of the day, we really do end up with a great project, but it's everybody's input. So everybody's input from this committee was, you need to be able to exit onto Mill Street. I'll bet we have a better project exiting onto Mill Street. So I left here happy, saying, you know what, we didn't consider that as an issue. Now it's a big issue. So, you know, the same thing. And if the Park Service says by adding an addition, you know, that is a detriment to the project somehow, that's what those guys do. They know. So we take everybody's input, and hopefully at the end of the day, we've got a project we really like, and I think we're heading that way.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, perhaps to Bill, can we get a more eye-friendly version of this thing? I didn't bring a magnifying glass this evening.
Right,
I'll-
if you send us the PDF, John.
Yeah, I can definitely send you the PDF.
Okay, thank you.
One question that I don't think anybody's asked yet, but I'm gonna ask it just out of curiosity. The two towers that are on the mill, when you said you were thinking about adding floors, my thought was maybe you were thinking about adding floors inside the towers. What's your intention to do with the towers?
You know, that's a tough question because it's hard to do much with those. There's not a lot of space to them. We'll have, you know, I don't, to answer your question, I don't completely know what we're doing with them. We're certainly leaving them there. We'll have access to them, but what they'll actually do, I don't know. There won't be a unit up there because you can't put somebody up on a tower without, you don't have enough means of egress. But we'll do something with it.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just get clarification one last time. So now we're at 159 units?
Yes.
And how many parking spaces, not counting the overflow?
They say 260. But I wouldn't hold that right now. That's still to be determined.
259?
That's what he's showing here, but again, this is,
That's including the handicap parking?
yes,
And the overflow, 40?
right.
38.
38?
Yeah, it says it right there in red.
Thank you.
It does.
But again, these aren't engineered, so take it with a grain of salt. They may change a space here or there.
And then does that result in a request for a waiver or a reduction in parking?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think, it's very, very close.
Okay.
My suspicion with the overflow, it doesn't, but I don't know that.
So, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, to the town planner, since we're not gonna talk about traffic because we don't have our representative or their representative here tonight, what else can we talk about?
Well, I think John wanted to hear from the neighborhood. We also have the fire chief and the assistant fire chief here tonight. I'd like to hear, they're here to talk about the project. I did get a letter from the water and sewer superintendent today, which I put in your package, to talk about some of those issues. But I think really to hear from the neighborhood folks about what they think and if there's anything they would like the developer to carry out to mitigate the impacts of the project.
Okay.
Just one other thing, I don't know if you said you wanted to get some input, so I just happened to drive by the other day from the opposite direction. I don't usually go south on Mill Street, I'm usually going north on Mill Street, and I happened to notice, there was some discussion last time about the sidewalk and how it kind of ends right at the corner of the mill. But one of the things that I noticed, and I don't know if anybody's ever pointed it out to you or not, but you have a window on both corners of that building on the first floor. Whereas if those two windows were removed, you could cut the stones below those two windows out and literally have a walkthrough that goes through the corner of the building without really having to move your road that much.
Well, so the engineer, that would be an issue with the Park Service. That is something they take issue with.
Okay.
But the engineer has come up with a way to align the road such that we can get rid of the pinch point
Okay.
on the sidewalk. So, right now, there's literally about a 15-inch sidewalk. And I think we can have a full sidewalk there when they're done with it.
Okay. All right. If it's all right with you, would we like to invite the
Perfect.
fire chief up?
Well, I'm here to answer any questions you want, because I missed the last meeting, but you received my letter, so.
Okay.
I put a copy in your binder. It should be in tab D, if you wanted to refer to it.
So could you just give us
I
a,
mean, just based on listening here, you're asking questions like fire lanes and sprinkler systems. Those things have to be brought up to code by law, or we don't sign off on it. So the
Yeah, but that can't-
contractors are well aware of that. So, I mean, I don't think they're gonna build anything that's not gonna be built to code, because they know we're not gonna approve it.
Fire prevention has to be signed off before the board even gets their site review plan, no.
What's that?
Fire prevention has to be signed off before the planning board even gets a site review plan. That'll be
We
fire
don't
lanes,
give a
everything.
final sign off until occupancy is ready to be given.
Well, how do you do that when you got sustained pressure and everything from the road?
Repeat that?
Your other fire assistant said that you're gonna use a commercialized sprinkler system in a residential dwelling. So residential dwellings require a higher system. Can you explain that one?
What do you mean? I'm missing your point. Let me put it to you this way. When the mill was in operation as a textile facility, the code requirement for industrial setting is higher than it is for a residential setting.
I would have to disagree with that, but I'll take that up.
You can
It is
disagree
a-
all you want, it's right in the code.
All
The
right.
sprinkler heads are high hazard rated heads according to the assembly use.
Yeah, but you're making this a residential dwelling, so you have to meet residential sprinkler
Right,
code system.
then they're gonna bring it up to code, and they're gonna put the correct heads in with the correct pressures, and their engineer's gonna review it. We're gonna get a set of the plans, we're gonna send it to the fire protection engineer at DFS, and he's gonna review it. And nothing gets signed off unless it's correct, according to the code and Mass General Law.
How about your fire lanes? They should be zigzagged and put on the site review plan. Zigzag yellow lines painted, fire lane.
It'll say fire lane, it'll have
I
a
don't-
yellow
yeah, but I don't
line,
see it.
just like it is in
But that
any
can
other
change this whole
plaza.
parking lot design. That's why I'm asking. I don't see any of those zigzag painted
Well,
lines.
the fire
that
lanes
say
will be
fire
there, I'm
lanes.
sure.
But then how do we know how many parking spots we have?
I don't know, you'll have
I
to
don't
ask the
know.
contractors, he just
That's
answered
why I'm
those.
asking you.
The fire lanes will be there, I can assure you, and
That's
the
Mass
building,
code, it has to be
the
on
building
site
inspector
review
will
plan.
ensure that as well, because we have a good building inspector and he's on top of things.
No, I don't wanna, alright, I'm just gonna ask the state.
I mean, any of these board members that know me know I'm very thorough. I mean, I would never let anything slip by. I have no horse in the game here. And any fire chief would want this developed in any town, instead of having a vacant building there. because right now it's dangerous. And you can't tell me that neighborhood people are okay with people doing drugs and other unlawful things in there. I can't imagine that.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak on the project?
Thank you, Chief.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we did get the letter from Mary Palazzo.
Did, yep. we
I
did.
don't believe she's here, but I could read it into the record if you like.
Don't mind, that'd be great.
Okay. Questions and concerns about the mill project. My first concern is to keep Dudley a residential town rather than a rental community. Condominiums would be preferable to rental units. Condo owners pay real estate taxes. I own a 4-unit building on Oxford Ave, and I live in the building. Traffic is already heavy in this area. How much more traffic can these side streets handle? After this building is renovated and there are 154 quote-unquote affordable units, I am wondering what my ability to attract tenants will be. I'm also concerned about the impact on this section of Dudley. How will the rents be determined? Will they be subsidized? I'm asking for some figures on how much in taxes this building will pay. Tenants don't pay real estate taxes. The building renovations will be completed with grants, and there will be tax credits to the building owner. So how much actual tax will the owners pay? What stipulations will be required by government grants? How much tax increase will residents of Dudley bear if more children enter the school system and education costs increase? In the last few years, I've had a large real estate tax increase due to the building of the extravagant fire department complex. How much will the water bill increase with all this additional usage? Water rates have increased 2 times. My last increase was $100 for the past quarter, but my usage was the same as the time period the prior year. We need to look at the long-term effects, not just focus on getting this building used in some way, anyway, right now. Mary Palazzo.
I'd like to thank her for her comments. And I would say that if you would like to make any comments to that, you're welcome to.
Just, the town does have a tax agreement
Yep.
with Camden Management,
Mhm.
which set the actual tax schedule for a 20-year period. So I could get back to her with those numbers. That was,
Yeah, I think if we could have that for a further meeting, that would be great.
okay.
And I would like to bring up the fact that she mentioned that there was gonna be 154 affordable units, and I don't think that's really the case. I think the case is gonna be 10% of the units would be affordable. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, we've agreed to 10%, which is 16 units. And they're affordable. One of the regulations that came up was to make them locally affordable, or at least a portion of them, which I thought was a great idea.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we did get a letter from the Water and Sewer Superintendent.
Okay.
It came in this afternoon.
Yep.
I sent a copy of this letter to Mr. Gumpert this afternoon as well, and to Bowler Engineering. These are primarily comments technically related to the water and sewer systems. Mr. Petrinos is asking for some minor improvements to both systems to accommodate the use. But the main concern of, adequate water supply is addressed here. There is adequate supply, and there's a 12-inch main in Mill Street, which is capable of satisfying the water demands for both the sprinkler system and the domestic use. The sewer system is sufficient to accommodate the waste flow from this project, although he is asking for a new sewer line from the building. But other than that, I think this letter demonstrates that the water and sewer systems are adequate to accommodate this building with some minor improvements.
And you said this letter was forwarded to the,
Yes, did you have any comments on this letter, John?
I did.
Okay.
And we're going to replace all the services to the building.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification purposes, if I may, so the issues that are raised by Mr. Petrinos with regards to the apparently insufficiency, you are going to remediate that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Bill, would we continue this public hearing to our next meeting? And then hopefully we can have the traffic study engineers back with us and,
John, when will your engineers have the revised site plans? And we need a week or two for our engineer to review them as well, so.
I would think we're 2 weeks away from having a plan for you to review.
Okay.
Probably 4 weeks away. With the holidays, that does whatever that does to them.
so our next scheduled meeting would be for January 12th.
You know, I don't know that the 12th gives you enough time to review what we put forward to you, so I'd probably, when's the next meeting after that?
26.
The 26th.
26, I think, would be a better plan.
Okay.
And again, I think what I wanted to do tonight was just show you the direction that we're going.
Yep.
And that we're in fact moving forward on some of these items. Now, they'll clarify that. I think our traffic engineers will work with your peer reviewers and get in concert on that.
Yep.
So I think, I really think the 26 is a better shot for
Okay.
everybody.
Okay. Bill, could I just, could we just change the Fish Road one? I know we earlier said that we would do that on the 26th. Let's just flip-flop them and do the Fish Road on the 12th. And
Okay.
we'll do the mill on the 26th, and that way there we just have one public hearing for each
Okay.
meeting. Everybody okay with that? All right. So, all right, then we'll put you on the next agenda for the 26th.
Sounds great.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Sure.
I actually had another question.
Okay.
Not related to parking, not related to traffic. I'm wondering when we were gonna get around to it, so I thought maybe I could.
Go ahead.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the green area and the walkway along the river, because we haven't really heard much about it. I know it's kind of sketched out here on the map, but I was kind of wondering, how does that work? Is that gonna be a publicly deeded way? Is that gonna be deeded to the town as a public way, so that?
I think that will be. I don't know the complete answer to that, but I think your question's great about the river, corridor, and what is it that we're doing there. We're trying to have a river walk that would be open to the public, be used by our residents as well, but it certainly is to be invited to the public to use. And the goal is for the next group that comes along, whether it be on the Webster side or the Dudley side, to improve the next section of river. So it really becomes a focal point and drives, the idea of the TIF district is that it drives on both the Dudley and the Webster side. Maybe someone puts a restaurant on one of those lots, and you begin to get more and more activity on that river. And we haven't talked much about it. We're certainly going to work to provide access and a clean riverbank and something people would enjoy. And our hope is that we can continue that process and continue to develop, really with the community's input on what do you do with that river? How do you really make that a focal point? And I felt like that was the best part of the TIF plan, because it brought Webster into the conversation as well, and fixing their side of the river. So I think that's still to be determined. We've shown paths and so forth, but we haven't taken it much further than that.
I think what I just want to make sure that what we're going to get out of this deal, as far as the town's concerned, is that we're going to be looking at something there that, some sort of a walkway that's going to be usable, possibly some benches.
I agree.
People could sit in and and enjoy the.
Yeah, we want
Hopefully what's
it
gonna be
to be an
improving.
amenity for both the town and for the property.
But I don't want to find out that, if 10 years from now, we have a new owner, if your company sells the project.
Right.
That all of a sudden they decide, well, geez, there's nothing to stop us from putting a fence here and stopping people from the town from coming onto our property.
So I think we can work collectively to figure out how to make that work.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may, have you had conversations with Conservation? I suspect that they'd have some involvement in this area.
Yes, they
Especially the
would.
river.
Yeah, and yes, we have.
You have.
So
Is it inappropriate to suggest that you would work those details out with them as opposed to with us as a body?
I think both, honestly. I think you're trying to protect your access to it as well, which I understand. If everybody owns a little section of the river and everybody puts a fence on their section, then it's not much of a public
Right.
benefit. If we can figure out a way that everybody on both sides of the river makes it open, then it makes it just that. And I'm fine with your thought that, yeah, but if you're not here 10 years from now, what if somebody puts a big fence in? That makes sense. So I think there's a way to come together and try to protect against that.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I'm not suggesting that that's our place to make that decision, nor is it conservation as far as granting a deeded public way. This is something that's gonna have to be worked out with the selectmen and the owners. I just want to get it on the record now, because I haven't heard it talked about, and I want to make sure we're not here in the 11th hour talking about a definitive plan to be approved, and somebody hasn't still explained to me whether or not that guarantee is going to be there.
So I hear your question, and I simply hadn't had it before, but I'm happy to go down that road.
Thank you.
Because it works for me as well. I'd like the next owner on the adjacent property to be similarly motivated to create a walkway, so it's not just on the block that I happen to own. So I'm in favor of that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment about our next meeting, a little preparation. So I think this project is great. I think it's gonna be great for the community. I think it's been great working with you guys, with the applicants so far. You guys are just trying to listen to our comments and be proactive as well as reactive. My concerns or questions are basically only related to traffic. So last time that we met, we talked about it, and we heard that any traffic improvements away from the immediate area of the site would be something that the town might have to pursue by following grants or some kind of other state projects or programs. I just kind of wanted to know what was out there, what kind of things we would target as far as grants are concerned, or programs or something would be available for us to try to mitigate some of the problems that may or may not be coming upon us in the future. If that would be something we can kind of do some homework on for next time, or?
I can tell you about a program that we have already inquired about. Mass DOT has a program at no cost to a community to address issues of congestion at intersections. So our West Main Street, Village Street, Schofield Ave intersection is a perfect candidate for that program. So what happens is the highway superintendent has already submitted a letter of interest for that program to examine that intersection. So DOT will bring out their people to examine the traffic pattern at that intersection, look at the signal, and perhaps suggest some signal retimings. So that's one thing that can happen fairly quickly.
Okay.
And I think it's probably in response to this project, adding additional flow through there.
I think if I lived in this project, there's no way I would ever go towards that intersection. I would go out Mill Street every way. I would
Right.
rather drive 20 miles around in a circle than deal with that intersection. So I think some of the problems that we're gonna be dealing with is once you get off of Mill Street and start making the right or left at the end, is what are we gonna do there, especially when you get to when you make the right, the next corner, the next stop sign. There's gonna be the focal point,
Okay.
so I don't know what
That's a pain in the butt with the school up there in the morning.
Correct, yeah, so I mean, what, I just would like to know if there are programs out there, some kind of help that we could get to try to mitigate some of these going down the line. Obviously, the main intersection is a concern, but so are the other intersections.
We've also received a MassWorks grant to do design of some sewer
Yep.
and sidewalk improvements in this area as well, so that'll be a big help to particularly pedestrian flow and resolve some of the concerns the sewer department has with antiquated sewer lines serving, properties that cut across yards and under porches and things of that sort, so that'll be a big benefit as well.
Okay.
And we have Complete Streets program that we've already submitted an application for Mason Road, but we could certainly go after improvements in this area as well.
Okay. And then I don't think that any issues with the schools or adding students to the schools are gonna be an issue, but just out of curiosity's sake, would it be kosher to ask the superintendent just if the schools are anywhere near capacity?
Mr. Chairman, I believe, at some point, mention was made that the schools are under capacity at this
That's what I'm
point.
trying to get at. That's my assumption as well.
I think that came up at the TIF meeting.
Yes, I
Did I
believe
miss it
so,
there?
yes, yeah.
All right, never mind.
Mr. Chairman, in the same vein as Mr. Edmondson's questions, one of the critical elements here is Ardlock. And mention has been made in terms of widening that road. Who's going to pay for that? They pay, okay, in that direction. And what's the timetable for that? I mean, is that going to be done concurrent with construction or demolition, or?
Yeah, no, it'd be concurrent with construction.
I'm sorry?
Would be concurrent with construction.
Concurrent with construction, okay. So
And we'll bring forward the list of items that we're actually funding through the redevelopment of the project. It'll be shown on the engineering plans.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Everybody else all set?
Any comments?
Any comments? Yep.
I just got one thing, just so there's no confusion. The sprinkler system is a brand-new system they will put in. The existing system is no good. The pipes froze and ruined it, so, just so, I heard last meeting there was a little bit of confusion about that. The entire system is being replaced.
Thank you. So we just, will reconvene the public hearing on the January 26th meeting
At 7:15?
at 7:15.
Okay.
Same time, January 26th, 7:15.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Thanks
Gary.
very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year. We'll see you in the new year.
Good deal, thanks, guys. Thank you.
Whoa. Fire drill?
Okay, so that'll take us on our agenda. We have another meeting coming up at 8:30, but we're not there yet, so let's take a look at what's left on the agenda. We already did the acceptance of Fish Road definitive subdivision, so the next item on the agenda would be number 5, planner's plate.
Well, I don't have anything new to add.
You don't have anything new, okay? And then we have number 6, comments from the planning board.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was going to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It seems a little premature as we're still here, but in any event, let me get that on the record at the moment.
You got 30 minutes, can you fill it?
Well, I know it's probably too much to hope for, but let's hope that it's a COVID-less year
Yeah.
going forward,
I would agree. Hopefully things get better. And then
Take a 10-minute recess or something?
we
Well,
could.
just we got 30 minutes, can I take 5? Some of the comments that we're making, I find to be spot on. And the fact that we're not dealing with the final plan, I'm a little bit confused about what we're looking at and what the end game is. Sorry to sound like a rookie here, but we're looking at plans that are incomplete, that are, everything's moving, but we're being asked to approve something. So are we approving a pie-in-the-sky theoretical that's gonna work out, or are we gonna
agree
approve
with you.
something that's
Yeah,
on
at the next,
paper?
at the next meeting, we'll get the revised plans.
Okay.
And that will be the plan set that we'd be looking at to approve. But if we don't have to at that meeting, there could be other comments and concerns that we could continue that to another meeting, ask for more changes based on what they present. But I've had Graves Engineering hold off on completing their peer review because these plans aren't finalized yet, so there's no
Right.
point in wasting their time reviewing something that might change. So I
Okay.
hope to have
And
that
quite
done.
honestly, I had a couple comments about the parking, but knowing that the parking plan isn't even finalized,
Yeah.
why? Let's wait to see what they were doing and then come back from there. And I personally think also that some of the parking is in conjunction with traffic, how people are leaving out.
Right.
Getting parking places too close to the road and, how much space do we have to leave for cars to pile up, whatever else, but I was kind of a little bit confused. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased to see that they've worked out or are working on some sort of a plan, at least to address the Mill Street access. I think that was critical. I think there was way too much emphasis on Ardlock and whatever would have resulted there in terms of traffic issues.
I think, yeah, I would agree with you. I think that them coming, they are premature with their plans, but I think their idea was, we gotta start someplace, so we might as well start here. And I think they were known that a project of this size is gonna always have comments from the public and other departments. So I think they were wise in getting into a situation like they are now, where they have the chance or the opportunity to hear the comments and then take care of as many comments as they can prior to submitting the final plans. But at some point in time, we do need the final plans so that we can make the, and then out of those final plans, there could be changes that need to be made based on our professional town engineer's review, or
Yeah.
just that, something that nobody's seen in the past, and it comes up at a public hearing, and then we ask for an accommodation, so.
The revised miniature site plan that we have seems to show that there's gonna be a curb cut leading from the overflow parking onto Mill Street, which is about 25 feet north of the access into the Tri-Valley parking lot. And my understanding is that you never have two curb cuts with traffic that close to each other.
That's what I asked him. He said that his traffic engineer's idea would be that they would close the first one and just have the
Okay.
second one.
Right, I think it shows here on the plan, looks like there's a curb line.
Yeah.
Right here, Dan,
There is a section of that parking lot, I visited the site a couple of times, and there is a section of the parking lot, I think that's what they're talking about here, that doesn't seem to be utilized at all. You may see an occasional vehicle there, but there are approximately, I think I counted 16 to 18 spaces there. And literally, it's some distance from the Tri-Valley building, so I suspect that it's the last resort for somebody who might be looking for parking there. And even at that, their lot's never fully utilized either. I have no that I've ever seen it when it was fully utilized. I may not be looking at it at the appropriate time, but there always seems to be some number of additional parking spaces unused.
Well, that's not set in stone yet either.
No,
There's
no.
deed-
There's still
deed access
a
on
lot of
that.
moving
There's no
parts.
nothing on that.
A lot of moving parts.
Who knows if Tri-Valley's gonna even, owners are gonna agree to that.
Mr. Chairman, we have some invoices to approve, if you want to do that.
Okay, let's look at those.
What are we looking at, boys, Bill?
H.
H, oh.
Okay, so the first invoice looks like it's for Graves Engineering in the amount of $1,176.80. And this is for
Piasta?
Piasta Road Review.
Yes.
Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to pay the invoice to Graves Engineering in the amount of $1,176.80 for Piasta Road Review?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the invoice for $1,176.80 for Graves Engineering work done in regards to Piasta Road.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
We have a copy started here, we'll need one more. Do we need two copies on that bill, is
Yes.
everything?
All right, I got a second one going here.
Okay.
And I'm not voting at all because I'm a member. I live in Piasta,
Okay.
so I'm
Okay, so you're
I'm not here.
gonna abstain from that.
abstaining big
All right,
time.
so we have on the vote, it was four with one abstention. Second item to vote for invoices.
Mill traffic.
$1,717.32, and it's for the
We need Mr. Latrobe's signature there.
Stevens Linen Mill traffic study review, traffic study, yeah. Peer review of the traffic study.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the amount of $1,717.32 to Vaness and Associates for the peer review of the Stevens Mill traffic study.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous?
Paper flying around here.
One more.
I'll tell you, I don't know how many trees we killed on this thing. Environmental impact. else signed up here? Mr. Wetruba, we're gonna get a signature on that one? Anything?
And then, do we have one more here? Yes, we do.
It's the third one.
So this was kind of interesting. This is a,
Oh, 2016 cents.
this is an escrow account closing out?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes. This was when you were not on the board at the time.
Yep.
We had a major site plan review for a parking lot at 263 West Main Street, which was quite contentious, but the board did approve it. However, nothing has happened there in about a year, so I think the developer is not planning on going forward.
Okay.
So I just thought we might as well close that account.
And right now, there's a total of $2.16 in the
Yes.
account, plus whatever interest would be accrued.
Correct.
Wow, how much interest did that accrue?
Not a whole lot, I would guess, but. Would somebody like to make a motion that we would release or close the escrow account associated with Peter Bannister and the parking lot site review?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we close out the escrow account for Peter Bannister parking lot site plan review, in the amount of $2.16 plus accrued interest.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous?
Where are we in terms of signatures here, anyway? We got two copies of that running around?
There's one.
There's one.
You got one,
You
Scott?
got one too, okay, 2 copies. I am amazed, there's nobody here from Open Farms. Oops.
So that's the one.
Okay.
Bill, could I just inquire with you, do you know off the top of your head, how many letters did we send out to the people that live in Tobin Farms?
About 32, I think. Do you remember, too, how many letters we sent out to Tobin Road? I think it was about
About
in the
37.
low 30s.
Okay.
With the snowstorm outside, we might not see anybody here.
Did you have any response to that, Bill, any indication?
No. Thank you.
I think we have to give them, you know, it was noted that we would have the meeting at 8:30, so we have to wait till 8:30.
No. We certainly concur, that's appropriate, we need to stay to schedule here.
We could take a slight recess if anybody would like to.
Well, and we could probably indulge in some of the selectmen's candy. We don't get many of the bennies, so.
So we'll take a 10-minute recess, Fran? Thank you.
Bill, I noticed the selectmen have their own handy-dandy little tablets now.
I've seen that, too.
Town finance.
Okay, thank you and welcome back. On the Dudley Planning Board, December 8th, our 8:30 agenda item is Tobin Farms. And we did invite the residents of Tobin Farms to this meeting. And basically, I'd like to start out by saying thank you for coming. And also, this meeting is informational. We know that there's issues with your subdivision. We're not gonna solve them all tonight, obviously, but we wanted to basically have this meeting so that we could get the residents to understand what the issues with the subdivision are, where they stand today, 19 years after the subdivision was initially built or started building. And we had one of our members, Mr. Wetruba, who did some extensive research on where everything stands right now, so we have a better idea of what the situation is, what's left to be done, what's not done. And there's also some new information from the town of Dudley in ways that this could be done, given the current situation that we have where the developer has basically not completed the subdivision and the roads are not accepted. So there's some avenues to get this done or pursue, or that could be pursued to get this done, but all of it's gonna take cooperation and homeowner input, basically. It's not something the planning board can do on our own, and that's why we invited you to come to this meeting. So if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Wetruba, if you can go through your
Sure.
list of items.
So, just a quick background on how we got to this meeting in the first place. We were looking through at uncompleted, unaccepted subdivisions in town, and I had noticed that Tobin Farms had actually quite a bit of work done in 2015. That exhausted what was left in the money that had been retained from the contractor. And we talked about whether or not we could get Tobin Farms accepted as a town road. And we started to look through the list of things that back in 2015 had been reported by the town's engineer during his review, items that needed to be taken care of. And then we looked at some of the things that had been done by Ramco Construction. Of course, the one that probably was the most notable was that they did the top coat in phase 2. And they had installed berms. But then there are things on the list at this point that create liability issues for the town and do not meet the current subdivision regulations, or the subdivision regulations even at the time of when the subdivision was presented back in 2002. So for that reason, we can't just recommend this subdivision be accepted by the town. And the body that actually makes that decision in town is the selectmen, because they act as the highway board, correct?
Highway commissioners.
Highway commissioners, sorry, I was looking for that word. The highway commissioners, but they expect that to be referred to them by the planning board for acceptance. They look to us for our recommendation. So, we looked at the list of things. There are quite a few things on here that are small things that we could probably work around. But there are some key issues that we're not seeing any way to work around. So I'm just gonna go down this list real quick. The phase 2 has no sidewalks in it. So that's Stebbins Drive. And just for clarification, on the original plan, there was a short little street that ran from Nellie's Way over to Stebbins Drive that was called Summer Lane. That apparently at some point was changed and is now considered Stebbins Drive, according to the most recent plan that we saw. So I wasn't even aware of that, but just so you know where I'm talking about. There are no sidewalks in phase 2. There are a total, the original plan called for a total of 3 stormwater detention basins. So, quick explanation of what a stormwater retention basin is. all of the stormwater on the streets runs into those drains, runs through pipes, and instead of just coming out into the wetlands, they're supposed to go into detention basins. And the detention basin acts as a filter and filters out a lot of the impurities that are picked up from the road, things that come off cars, all of that. So they basically are there to protect the environment. There's supposed to be a total of 3 stormwater detention basins constructed in that subdivision. 1 was completed. 1, according to the engineer, is half done. And 1 of them was never completed at all. It wasn't built at all. The other item is stop signs. There are no stop signs in your subdivision, and there are no street signs in your subdivision. The stop signs obviously are, from a liability standpoint, important. That's actually kind of a small item as far as cost goes, but nonetheless. The next item are, you have 2 wetlands crossings, one on Stebbins Drive, formerly Summer Lane, and one down near the end of Tobin Drive. Those are the areas that were filled in and have retaining walls. And on those roads, there were supposed to be stone walls constructed and then fencing at the top of the retaining walls. That was never done. On Stebbins Drive, wooden guardrails were constructed, and I'd say they're 90% complete. And then on Tobin Drive, there are no guardrails whatsoever. So I don't know how well you guys, or ladies and gentlemen, know that area, but if you walk over there, basically you got the roadside, you got no guardrail, there is a embankment that it goes down, and then it goes right to the top of the retaining wall, and then it's about a 9-foot drop down into the stream down below. So if you had a car that, for instance, was in that neighborhood and it was in the wintertime and it hit a patch of ice and were to skid off the road, it could conceivably go off the road and end up upside down in that gully, which is not ideal. So that's why there's supposed to be something there to stop that from happening. And right now on Tobin Drive, as I said, there's nothing there. And then the last couple items are, we do not have what is called an as-built plan for this subdivision, which is when everything is completed. The engineer goes back out and a plan is drawn up that shows how everything in the subdivision actually is. I'm wondering if the reason why there's no as-built plan on file is because maybe so many things aren't done. And the last item is we need to verify if the meets and bounds have been done. Our understanding is that there was some survey work done there. I know that somebody had mentioned that they had seen somebody flagging some things in that. So that might just be a simple matter of going out and making sure that the actual stone markers are in place. So that's where we stand. So the question becomes, how does that work get paid for? And the reason why we're talking to you guys about this tonight is, what we're hoping is if you folks can get enough of your neighbors involved that would be willing to present a petition to the Board of Selectmen and actually request that this work that needs to be completed gets completed. The way the process would work is, first, you have to get at least 50% of the owners in lineal footage. So it's not, if you've got 35 owners in there, it's not that you need half of 35. What you need is, you need half of whatever the total amount of linear footage is in that whole subdivision. If you get more than half of the people to agree, then you can present the petition to the selectmen, and then What the selectmen would do is they would move forward with the process of finding out how expensive it would be to get the work completed. Once they figure out how much it is to complete all the work, they then present that to the homeowners and explain to them that the way it works is it would be in the form of a betterment. The town has the work done, but then assesses a betterment to all of the homeowners in that subdivision to pay for it. And that can be spread out and financed over a period of years. And typically that's worked out between the homeowners and the assessor's office, because it ends up being actually tacked onto your, it's like an extra tax bill. So it's not ideal, but the consequences of taking no action at this time are much worse. There are subdivisions in town that are much older and in worse shape and need more work done. Right now, the condition of the roads is actually really good in Tobin Farms. So, in part because of the top coat was done in 2015. So the thinking of the planning board and I was, if we could try and let you know that now is the time to act, because 10 years from now, when that road does start to deteriorate and need work, it's not gonna be maintained by the town. So you're gonna find yourself in a situation where now everybody's gonna be arguing about, well, I don't go on that part of the subdivision, so I shouldn't have to pay for it, you pay for it. And the next thing you know, the road just continues to get worse and worse and falls apart. So I guess at this point, I think I covered what I had in my notes. I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to open it up for questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt just a minute. Thank you, Mr. Wetruba. For the benefit of those that are here, if you go to the town bylaws, go to the town website, the town bylaws are there. We're talking about Chapter 257, Streets and Sidewalks, and that details the specifics with regards to the betterment process. As Mr. Wetruba mentioned, this is extended over a period of time, and indicated in that bylaw is an up to 25-year period. I would suggest or advise you perhaps to take a look at the town bylaw, read that through. It's a couple of pages that gives you the details in terms of the specifics. Mr. Wetruba's kind of given you the general background, but there are some specific bits of information that I think you would probably benefit from if you had the chance to read through that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the highway superintendent is here tonight. We could ask him to come up and present his opinion of this development.
The highway superintendent?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to come up?
Is
sir?
phase 1 complete? And just not phase 2? You know that? Is phase 1 complete?
Except for the stormwater basins.
All right.
Good evening.
How you doing, Joe?
So I took a ride through the subdivision the other day with the planner, and there's not a great deal of things that need to be done there. There's the signage, as you mentioned. Certainly there needs to be some slope treatment from the edge of the road to the top of the retaining wall at one of the crossings, and I think it'd be wise to put the at least some guardrail, if not fencing. I don't know if the original plan called for fencing, but that should be done. But other than that, I mean, the roadway itself looks like it's in pretty good condition. The drainage seems to be in place, although I haven't, confirmed that with the plans as far as the catch basins and drainage structures. But I know there is the fact that there's at least one missing detention basins. Again, the process would be to price out the, if the residents were interested in having the work done through the betterment system, whatever their frontage was. So if somebody owned 100 feet of frontage or 300 feet of frontage, it would be broken down by not 10 out of 20 property owners, like you said. It would be you know, if they owned the majority, at least 50% of the frontage line of the roadway, that 50% of those owners, well, that frontage measurement,
Right, so,
we're in agreement with going with the betterment
so if
system.
I wasn't clear on that, let me rephrase it this way. If over 50% of the lineal footage owners actually present a petition, you can actually drag the rest of your development kicking and screaming to pay for it for the next however many years. Does that clarify it?
Jeff, we had some concerns about the berms. Could you talk about that?
Excuse me?
The berms?
Yeah, so it looks like, you know, there's some other minor things. The berm was installed at some point when the binder course of paving went in, and then the top course of paving went in, and the berms were never backed up. So looks like at least 2/3 of the subdivision, there's nothing backing up the berms. That's one other issue. It's lends itself to stability of the berm. You know, when you get into a situation with an early snowstorm or a late snowstorm, and there's no frost in the ground, you know, oftentimes you'll have an issue with if there isn't care taken. You know, you can plow off the.
I had a question, actually. Was it my understanding that the wooden guardrails that are erected over on Stebbins Drive, that they should have some sort of metal reinforcement or something metal?
Again, I haven't looked at the plans to confirm, but the typical DOT standard would be a laminating steel on the back of the guardrail beam. So there's a wooden beam on the face, but there's no metal backing that up.
Okay,
So-
you saw that when you were there, that there was
Yeah,
no metal on the back?
yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a question to Mr. Murray. We've talked about the betterment process, which involves the town, I assume, doing the work or contracting that work. And my understanding is that would be at the prevailing wage, right?
It would have to be done at prevailing wage because.
So there is theoretically, at least, the possibility of the homeowners, the residents, if they opted to go out and deal with a private contractor for what may be a lesser
Correct.
charge. Do you have any thoughts in terms of how much less that might be, or is that too theoretical?
I would hate to commit to a figure without actually taking a closer look, and certainly I've done construction estimating before in the past, and I wouldn't just.
But it
Fire
would
from
be
the
a
hip with that.
substantial amount, you suspect.
I
I guess I'm trying to walk you into something you don't want to go into.
Yeah, I don't think there's a great deal of money that
Okay.
would be expended to do that. And then, again, just as a correction, I think the process for the street acceptance, so the board would make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen then lay that out. They don't accept or deny the acceptance of the road. They lay it out, and then it goes to the town meeting, and the town meeting actually accepts it. So, and then obviously the voters are the ultimate decision makers. So there is also some risk with doing the work, completing it, and bringing it, and convincing the town meeting that. But that's a risk that a developer takes as well. So.
Just a question for you, on the berming that you were just discussing that was not backed up properly. Would that ultimately, if the sidewalks were installed, would that be taken care of when the sidewalks installation would be done, or?
It's certainly something that could be done when the sidewalk installation was done.
Okay.
If it's required, I don't know if there were any waivers granted in those areas for sidewalks, or.
Just in phase one?
In phase one.
Yeah. Phase one on one side of the street.
Okay.
Take it from somebody who's looked at every single agenda, every single meeting minute, every single video available of every meeting regarding Tobin Farms. There were no waivers granted for sidewalks in phase two.
Yeah, so I think in all fairness to the residents, before they made a decision, it would probably be a good idea, if they did want to do that on their own, or if they chose to have the town take the lead role, to get a full list of what the deficiencies are, have that identified, just like you would with a request for proposals, and then put that out there, get some sort of a cost estimate together, and then make a decision based on that, whether or not they would choose to do that.
Can a resident do the work themselves? Let's say they went on Amazon, bought a couple stop signs.
Certainly, if they're, if they have the ability or, license to operate equipment or perform the work, there's no reason why that they could do the work of the developer. If the town took it on and the highway department were able to perform the work that needed to be done to do those things, then, it could be done and the town could charge for that work or whatever, or, come up with an agreement. If the town contracted for the work to be done.
Well, let's say
Again,
like the homeowners on the road, hey, let's all throw $100 in and go buy some stop signs, some fencing, put it up themselves. Could you do that? I don't know.
I don't see why they couldn't, as long as it complied with whatever the design was.
Yeah,
It would have to be inspected and.
yeah, but Graves Engineering would do that in the end
Right.
anyway, so.
So in any case, let me ask you this, in any case, would it be possible that, let's say what Mr. Wetruba spoke to earlier with the betterment plan that's in place, or the betterment bylaw, if the, once the laundry list is complete of all the items that need to be addressed or estimated, is there anything in that list that you see or that you've heard of tonight that the town could do in part of that?
I don't think town can go on private roads.
Yeah, certainly there's things that the town could perform the work.
Some of the work. I'm
Yeah.
not saying all the work, but some of the things could be done by the highway
Yeah,
department.
I mean, it's routinely done that, when we do paving projects, that they would go out with and back up berm or back up paving. It's not a great deal of expense involved with that. Installing signs.
Guardrail laying around?
That we have plenty of damaged guardrail. So, I think the wisest thing to do with something like that would be to talk to a fence company and get some pricing on the guardrail. Again, I don't think, a lot of these things, I don't think there's a great deal of expense involved.
No, it seems like it's gonna come down, in my opinion, I think it's gonna come down to detention basins and sidewalks, basically.
Yeah, pretty much a sidewalk.
Everything else seems to be rather small.
You don't have water issues down there right now, right? There's no kind of water issues, nothing down
I
there?
haven't been alerted to any, and as far as the detention basin that's missing, I don't know if it's possible, if they could run the hydrology on it, and it may not be necessary to install that final detention basin, so they're, maybe the wise thing right now, because
Where
of,
is the water on that section of Stebbins Drive going now? If there's no detention basin even there, are the
there's
stormwater
a-
drains even in that part of the road?
I honestly haven't,
I can't
Taking
remember
that
seeing
close
it
of a
down
look.
there or not. But I mean, it begs the question, if the stormwater drains aren't even in that street, where's that water go?
Downhill.
Well, it's a cul-de-sac.
It's
though.
just.
Well, there is a-
It's gonna go down somewhere.
there is a stream that runs through there, and
Right.
I think ultimately winds up in, down.
Mosquito
Pier-
pond, maybe?
Mosquito.
I'm sorry?
Mosquito pond?
Mosquito pond, yeah.
Yeah. My thought was that we could maybe get in touch with the Conservation Commission. They have a representative that works for them that.
Well, I
inspects
think
things.
probably one of the wisest things that could be done, whoever did the as-built plan, I think there was possibly, I think Bill had mentioned there was possibly an as-built plan that was done, or the original designer, and then have them take a look
Okay.
at the design. They could maybe retake a look at the hydrology and assess what's going on with that. It doesn't appear to me at least that there's any type of drainage issues, and obviously the homeowners could probably speak better to that if they know of any issues that they
We
have.
don't have an as-built plan, though. All we have is the plan showing what was supposed to be built. We don't have a plan, we don't have the as-built.
I'm saying if
If there is.
an as-built plan is developed at that time,
Okay.
that could be analyzed.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
I'll open it up to the residents if if anyone would like to speak.
How you doing? My name's Dave Puzo. I live at 5 Nellie's Way. Thank you so much for your volunteer time. It's incredible that we got people like you in our town that are willing to do this kind of work, and I really appreciate it. It sounds like you put so much time into, doing research and figuring out what it will take for us to have a road accepted, and I really appreciate that. I find it a little bit hard to swallow. I've been there since the beginning, 20 years ago, and we paid, some pretty good money to have a decent house, but that was to include all of these things that were in the plan. And now for me to sit there and hear that, these things may be able to get accomplished, but at an assessed price to the residents of Tobin Farms is a little bit tough to swallow, Some of the things that you mentioned, the stop signs, the little things that need to be backfilled behind the berms, no big deal. But when I hear sidewalks and detention centers, that sounds like big bucks to me. So I guess my question is, do you have any idea at all about how much money that might take?
Well, we have an estimate. I don't know how good this is gonna be because it's from 2015. So we've got several years that have passed. It's also from another contractor, so. But at the time, when Valgo Construction, not Valgo, sorry, Ramco. If I said Valgo before, I may have inadvertently said Valgo.
You said Ramco.
I did say
I believe
Ramco.
so, yeah.
Okay, I wanna make sure that those codes, you get them mixed up. So back in 2015, when Ramco completed a lot of the work, including the top coat, they talked about the cost that it would be to complete some of the deficiencies. And one of the deficiencies they talked about was the retention basins. The retention basin that is partially done, they estimated it would be about $30,000 to complete that. The retention basin that has not been constructed at all, they estimated to be about $60,000 to complete that. So the two retention basins at the time could have been done for $90,000. They also went on to give an estimate for the cost of the sidewalks. They estimated 2,200 lineal feet of sidewalk in phase 2 at a cost of approximately $35 per lineal foot. So we, Bill, what was the number we?
77,000.
That comes up to about 77,000 for that. Now, I would go as far as to say that I can't speak for the entire board, but myself, I'm thinking we don't need 2,200 lineal feet of sidewalk in phase 2. The previous board, way back when, granted a waiver for sidewalks on only one side of the street in phase 1. So my thinking is, we might be able to grant a waiver for one side of the sidewalks in phase 2. That would mean having sidewalks on the inside perimeter of Stebbin Drive and probably a section of sidewalk going down that section of Stebbin Drive that goes down to the cul-de-sac way down the end there, where the detention basin that has never been constructed is. So That's all we have for numbers, and again, that goes back, that's from 2015, so that would have to be adjusted for inflation, obviously, and
So that sounds like somewhere around 160,000 total
Yeah.
or so.
so if you rounded it up to 200,000 for everything, let's just throw that out there, just for the heck of it. If you round it up to $200,000, there are about 35 homeowners,
About 45 lots, I think.
about 45 lots, give or take, in Tobin Farms. So you'd be looking at spreading that cost out over 45 lots. And you'd be looking at spreading that out over, depending on what term you decide to go with, years. There would be interest you would pay, but typically these types of betterments have very low interest rates.
Mhm. Can you
So-
explain one more thing to me about the detention pond that was never installed at all?
Yes.
Where is that? Where was that supposed to be?
Okay, if you go down Stebbins Drive towards the cul-de-sac all the way down, where there are, on the left, there's a couple of house lots that aren't built. There's lots there on the waterfront that don't exist. You get down to the cul-de-sac, it's supposed to be right there on the right. The Lavoys own the house at the very end, and they own a lot facing the house, they own a lot to the right of it, and there's an easement on that lot for that detention basin.
Is that something that also could be waived?
That's what our chairman was just saying, that we would have to have the Conservation Commission's expert look at that and see whether or not what's there now for detention basins is enough to do the job of filtering that water so that it doesn't get into the wetlands.
I mean, I'm no engineer, but I don't believe there's any water problems, you know? in
So
that
you
area.
wouldn't see it as a water problem. I want to clarify, we're not talking about that you would see, like, during a bad rainstorm, the water backing up out of the stormwater drains. The water's going into the drains, that all appears to be working fine. But it's where does the water go after it goes down those pipes? Where it's going right now, from what we've been told by the engineer when he did his review in 2015, is that some of those pipes, it's just discharging directly into the wetlands. And it's not supposed to do that. Back in the good old days, all of the drains and all the streets and all the cities and everything, they just had them all terminate out at the river eventually. And that's how we ended up with, well, the Clean Water Act and things like that, because we
Does
started
that
to
act
figure
as
out
a
it's a bad
fil-
idea to have all that stuff just go directly into the.
So the detention center acts as a filter?
It does,
Okay.
it does. You've probably, if you go down, one of the big ones that's easy to see is if you go down Schofield Ave, Route 12 towards Connecticut, Perryville Estates on the right-hand side, there's a large one right on the corner there.
Yeah, right at the end of the road.
Yeah. So all of the storm water and rain runoff and everything that comes down those drains in that subdivision, it comes down and it goes into that pond. It's almost like a pond. And there's actually, I am by no means a conservation expert, but there's actually certain types of plants and things that they purposely plant in there because those plants are known to be really good at filtering out pollutants.
I don't want to rehash, history, but I also want to understand how the residents of Tobin Farms end up being responsible to flip the bill. So to me, when a planning board accepts a plan, there's some form of accountability that then has to take place between the builders, the developers, and the planning board. And I can remember back then, I came into a meeting because the developer was trying to get lots released to build houses on when they didn't have phase 2 sidewalks in. And my fear at that time was that if I didn't come in here and push to make sure that they got those sidewalks in phase 1 first before the planning board released lots, that the sidewalks in phase one would never end up being installed.
And it's a good thing you did that.
So that ended up, you know, at least moving phase one forward to completion. So I guess my, number one is, who is ultimately responsible, and at what point in time are these type of things like a detention pond supposed to be installed in the process of development? Because it seems like that would have been a first thing as site work to have in place before any lots should have been released for build.
So I can't really speak to the past. I could tell you that a lot of the things that happened in the past that caused problems like this, that a lot of the rules have changed and that we've resolved a lot of these things. I can give you an example, for instance. We recently had, last spring, we had a developer who has a development here in Dudley that he wanted to get another phase of his development accepted at town meeting. And when that went before the selectmen, and the selectmen discussed it, I remember they had a very candid discussion about how that they do not want to have a situation anymore where they are allowing a developer to be off the hook for certain phases, and then if he still walks away, I don't remember exactly how they paraphrased it, but basically they decided not to send it to town meeting for acceptance until he finishes all the phases.
Is there any way, fashion, or form that the planning board can go after the developers for
That is a legal question that is way beyond our
Okay.
expertise.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think it's our general understanding that there is no money there.
Well, that's,
Or
yeah.
there's a minimal amount.
But I think
if there
his
is
question
money.
is there anybody that can be sued for the money that's not there? And we can't even.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't enough
No,
money
you guys-
retained to complete the project. So I don't, you know, maybe nobody thought that it was gonna go on this long. And by the
that's-
time that it was, some things were actually done,
It was 2000
inflation
2002
outweighed
was
what the
when,
retainer value was, but, I guess, too, I wanna make a point that, I guess I wanna clarify phase one from phase two. Phase one included everything up to the bridges. So all the houses that were leading both Tobin Drive, Nellie's Way, and at the time Summer Lane, all the way up to the cross points, the bridges. That, everything before that towards Dudley Oxford Road was phase one. Everything beyond that point was considered phase two. I guess my question is, can those phases in the acceptance of roads, if in case the town or residents decide not to put the money up or whatever, can that be accepted in two phases, so to speak? Can Nellie's Way be accepted? Because none of that work that you mentioned, I believe, is on Nellie's Way.
So there's two issues there. The first issue would be, you would have to get the selectmen to approve that, and they might have a problem with that for the same reason I just explained.
Yeah, they didn't wanna do it before.
They don't wanna do,
I don't know why.
they don't wanna allow just phases to be accepted.
Well, let me put it this way, by street. So you're saying the whole development needs to be accepted at one time?
That's our understanding of what the selectmen
That's
prefer.
up to the
But let me give you the
selectmen.
second issue, because it's actually more paramount in our belief. The second issue is, it doesn't look like there's anything in phase two that affects your phase, Nellie's Way, but the reality is, it's what's under the ground. All of the storm drains on Nellie's Way, all of the water that goes into the storm drains, goes into piping and travels down what used to be Summer Lane and down into the detention basins that we're talking about. So the detention basins technically are actually part of the wastewater and stormwater management system for phase one.
Okay. So that's a no, probably. Yeah.
You could try it. I'm not gonna say you can't.
You can do them in phases if you wanted to. It's
Yeah,
just
I
up
mean,
to the
I'm just,
selectmen.
you know, one of the big concerns I have, I read your letter, and you wanted us to come and express our concerns. My kids are grown up now, but when they were having to go to the bus, and that bus would come on Dudley Oxford Road, and the developer wouldn't do much, a great job at plowing and didn't salt. That whole area leading up to that main road would become solid ice. And it does it both on Nellie's Way and it does it on Tobin. So if you're not real cautious about slowing down before that, T, you're gonna run right into traffic. And that is a huge concern for me today with the kids that are in that development. There's a lot of younger families that have moved in, people have moved out, people have moved in. There's a lot of kids in the neighborhood now. And I'm sure that a lot of the parents who have to deal with the kids going up to that are experiencing the same thing that we experience. And so my thought was, if Nellie's Way is all set and we can get that done quick and still worry about, the rest of it, but at least get Nellie's Way accepted, then maybe the school bus can come in and pick up kids in a safer manner so that nobody, God forbid, gets killed. That's one major concern of mine, okay? And the other concern is just in general, the plowing. We pay full taxes. We don't get any easement or any kind of a supplement in any way because of not having the services that somebody whose street is accepted gets. And we've bared that burden now for almost 20 years. So I wish that maybe the town would consider also the money it's saved over those 19 years by not having to service those things, and maybe consider a justifiable amount of money that may be able to be put towards us in consideration of those things.
I don't really know the mechanics of how something like that could
Yeah,
happen. with
I'm
the
throwing
town.
it out there
Yeah.
because I may be on the air.
But the
And
one
maybe
thing
somebody's hearing me,
The one thing I could tell you is, that's why my thinking is, could we waive half of the sidewalks in phase 2?
Right,
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking.
That would be great. Anything you could waive at this point, I think would be wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, question for the gentleman. Who's going to plow you this winter?
Well, I mean, I think it's mainly, I believe, one of the developers, it was a partnership, I believe. And I think one of the two, Mr. Slingo, I think he's been taking care of it. And I believe he has, I don't know who else would do it. And so sometimes I think when maybe things haven't gotten done, maybe to one's satisfaction, people call up the town and a little pressure is applied over the years. And he's been doing it, I believe.
By he, do you mean the town or Mr. Slingo?
Mr. Slingo, I believe,
Slingo.
has been taking care of
I
that.
thought we heard record mention of Remco as having been doing some of the plowing.
Well, maybe, but, that might have only been up to, maybe that happened last year or the year before, but up to a certain time, I think George was taking care of that. And, I appreciated that because who else was gonna do it? What would happen if he just decided to stop?
I don't know. I don't know that he has any legal obligation at this point. I think as I understand it, he's walked away from this project. Have you addressed any of these issues that, that we brought out this evening with him specifically?
No, not me personally, no. No. But I'll let somebody else talk. I've been up here long enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so one thing I just wanted to mention, we did, Mr. Clark was good enough to run the numbers, and, again, these numbers are only estimates from 2015, but the numbers that we had, like Mr. Waitrova stated, if it was $200,000, we don't think it's that that kind of money, but let's just say it was $2,000. With the number of houses that are there, it's looking like a $4,500 investment per household, which is a lot of money. And
Well, we do have, Mr. Chairman, there is mention in here, it could be spread out over a period of 25 years, but it also identifies, in fact, that the town administrator could, let me just read this so I get it correctly here. I'll have to start with the beginning of the sentence. The town shall accept settlement of the full amount within 30 days, or shall pay the bill, or shall bill the property owner for the total cost to be divided over a period of years, with interest to be computed at a rate established by the Board of Selectmen on recommendation of the town administrator, such rate to be at a minimum rate of 2% above the rate of interest charged said town on any funds borrowed by the town for this purpose. So there is a 2% premium, if you will,
All right.
on top of any funds that the town were to borrow
Right.
for the process. So our numbers are suspect at best, and probably on the low side, I think, with that thought in mind. But it would work out to something, if I followed my very basic arithmetic, less than $200 a year over a 25-year span.
And then basically, essentially, if that was the case, your problem is solved. Now, again, I understand it's a lot of money up front, but if it can be amortized and, you know, like I said, I think these numbers that we're giving are very conservative. I think the numbers can be less, or could be substantially less, if an engineer looks at the hydrology reports and the plans that are there, and it states that there's no need for the last detention basin to be built. That's a large portion of the money right there. If we waive half the sidewalks, that's another large portion of the money right there. So I mean, there's a possibility that the numbers that we're giving you right here are very conservative numbers, just so you know.
Why does it need any sidewalks back there? I mean, we haven't had sidewalks for 19 years.
So there was.
Everybody seems to get around and walk around fine.
So there's a situation that I went to a number of years ago. I went to a citizens planning training collaborative at Holy Cross College. And during this training class, there was an attorney that presented this information to other planning board members for all the towns in Massachusetts. You can go there and learn things. And there was a statement, something to the effect that there was a subdivision, and I can't even remember what town this was in, but there was a subdivision built, and the planning board waived the sidewalks in a portion of the subdivision. And it wasn't a problem for a number of years, but after some years had gone by, and the houses were resold, you know, once or twice, or who knows how many times, a family was living in a portion of this subdivision, and their child had a traumatic accident and was confined to a wheelchair. And then after this, you know, they noticed that, you know, their portion of the subdivision had no sidewalks, and their child's in a wheelchair and basically can't get around. So they went back to the town and said, hey, we want sidewalks in our part of the neighborhood. And it was the town's responsibility at that time to install the sidewalks.
I think, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think a part of that was that they found that the sidewalks had been stipulated in the original plan and had not been completed. The liability then fell to the town, not just the residents in that particular subdivision, if you will, but the town as a whole. And if you watch enough of those characters who advertise personal injury law on TV, you know that they're not settling for $1.98.
But any plan can be changed and revised, can't it?
Can be.
So you could omit that altogether from the plan.
Well, Mr. Chairman, after the fact.
We are bound by
Liability
subdivision.
would be there for the town.
We are bound by the subdivision regulations to a point, though.
So how do you get away with the schools? You don't even have sidewalks to the schools.
Schools are a separate entity.
If you talk about liability, right there is the biggest one, schools. Kids walk to school.
Wait, so you're talking about sidewalks to which school?
Any school. Mason Road, the high school, the middle
Well,
school.
we are, through Complete Streets, we are working on having sidewalks, additional sidewalks on Mason Road. That is an issue that has been addressed, that we are applying for
Is it going
funding
all
to
the
do
way
that.
up- Is it going all the way up to the main road, Oxford Dudley, or Dudley Oxford, whatever? it is?
No, we're not going that far, we're not applying for that much money, I don't think that much money would be available to us, but we are making an effort to start that process.
My point being.
Okay, and your point is well taken, but it's coming a little bit away from the issue at hand. This is Tobin Farms.
You're talking about a liability of someone moving into my neighborhood when you
Well,
got people living in
we're
city
talk-
towns going to schools. It's not even.
Mr. Chairman, maybe if the gentleman wanted to address the
Public
board, he could
safety
come up to
issue.
the microphone.
Yeah, if you want to come up and sit down.
I'm just throwing that out there, you, never mind, that's
Okay.
fine.
Well, it's kind of a public safety issue, that's why they required it. For your kids to walk to the school bus, you have to walk on the sidewalk instead of the road.
I mean, the other thing is
That's-
we have applied for this Complete Streets grant, and we don't know if we're gonna get the first one. Basically, it's, what is it, $400,000 per
Mhm.
year for a
Right.
period of 4 years?
Well, we applied for 400,000 for the first year.
For the first year.
Right.
So, I mean, there is some money available through the state to put sidewalks in places where they're not. You know, our main goal is to get the schools done in this areas where the schools are that have no sidewalks, but
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, we can't use that grant money on a private way.
no, we can't use it on a private way.
I'm not trying, I'm not saying you grant money for private property, no, I'm not saying that at all.
No, I didn't say you were, I just wanted to make sure in case you were wondering, hey, could we get that grant money?
Oh, no, I was just curious, I mean, how long has the school been there now, this is just happening now, that you're applying for the grant, I mean.
It was just offered.
We haven't been here as
It
long as the
was-
school has been here.
It's not that we're just applying for it now, it wasn't offered to us previously. Heck, I've only been on the board, how long have I been on the board?
2 years plus.
I don't want
I know
to-
you guys haven't been, but I'm just saying, when the school's built, that should have been a first priority.
Well,
I don't think it was required back in the
I
day.
know it's just going kind of round and round, but that's the first thing you would have thought of, a school, kids, walking to school.
It would have been wonderful if your input had been available back then when the school was built, but apparently they didn't have the benefit of that, unfortunately. I don't know, do we want to go on with any further discussion?
Come up, sir. Could you come up to the table, please, sir?
Here,
The table's fine.
Jim Audette, 3 Stebbins Drive. I hear a lot of this betterment talk, money, so on, responsibility to the residents. Where is the bond money? Where's the bond that was originally put up at the time? Has that faded away? How come, and if that's all been dismissed for whatever reason through a lawful situation, I don't understand why the developer, the one partner, is plowing the road. If he's been relieved due to no bond, why is he taking it upon himself to go through there? There has to be something that's still binding him to this. I know the company has gone under, and then they don't exist anymore, and I understand that. But the bond that was originally put up, and I'm sure there was one, how much it is, I have no idea. When it was, it had to be from the very beginning. So where is this bond money?
So back when this subdivision was approved at the time, you could approve a subdivision with a letter of credit. And at the time, the previous landowner who owned the land originally was Mr. Dudo, and at the time he was running Hometown Bank. So what we got at the time of the approval of this subdivision was a letter of credit from Hometown Bank. And now, Mr. Dudo has passed away, and Hometown Bank is not on the letter of
So
credit.
in 2002, there was no bond
No
required?
bond. There was a letter of credit.
Letter of credit?
Mhm.
That doesn't help the town whatsoever.
We know this now. They're not accepted anymore.
So who, because that wasn't in place at the time, now it takes the resident's responsibility for financial, for something that he didn't do, the company, the builders didn't do. Now all of a sudden it's our responsibility? That's not right. That's just not right. Because in any business, if you don't complete something, you can take the person that's responsible to court.
Yeah, I agree.
Why isn't any of this happening? I don't know if that's your responsibility, or you have to go to the Board of Selectmen to request this, or to push it along for it to follow through.
Well, over the years of this subdivision being constructed, a number of those years, the town of Dudley was being sued by the developer.
Repeat that?
A number of the years while the subdivision was under construction, the town of Dudley was being sued by the developer
For
a agreement or non-agreement that was made as to whether or not Phase 2 was going to have piping installed in it for future sewage treatment. I know,
that sounds like it wasn't
So-
it wasn't complete before the permits were granted. They let things go, things got passed,
But
and
because,
then,
but because of the lawsuit pending, the town, at the time, the town attorney said, we have to just keep things moving. I mean, I'm not the
and
town.
deal
I'm
with
not
it
the town's
later
attorney.
on.
I'm not the
There's
town's
too
attorney.
much responsibility on the residents. It's, the town let it go, turned a blind eye, if you will, for lack of a better word. And now it's, because there's some issues going on, basically with the street. I know you've heard this, but we all pay the same amount of taxes, same rates, but the town is is relieved of its duties to the streets that they collect tax on. That's not right either. So you talk about going through the neighborhood and trying to get a petition through to turn the financial burden over to the residents. Well, how about if we reverse that and get the petition to go back to the town to figure out a dollar amount to retroactive back to the resident for a percentage of the taxes that were paid with full responsibility on the town.
I would say
The
that's a
town
question.
let this all go.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that's an excellent question for an attorney. If they,
Yeah.
if the homeowners want to retain an attorney and go forward with some action,
So,
Suggest
for-
the homeowners
for-
might consider action against Mr.
town.
Slingo or any of those parties that you might still consider as having been principals at the beginning of this, your dealings with them and what promises they did not fulfill.
To get back to the main question is, where's the bond?
There isn't any.
well,
Oh, you said that there wasn't one because it was only a initial
Mr. Chairman,
credit. That's not right either, a
So can we
credit.
use that credit that was promised to us now?
where's that,
So it
Mr.
doesn't
Chairman,
exist?
through the chair to the town
Right.
planner.
Yeah.
In
then what
2015, Ramco Construction was paid for finishing the top coat in Phase 2, correct?
Correct.
I saw those invoices
Yeah.
where that money was in an account, correct?
Yes,
So that was retained?
yes. And then the town, did the work, so it was, Ramco did the work, and the town paid him for that work.
Okay. All right.
But then, that basically left a small amount of money in the account, which
Yeah.
wasn't enough to complete the project.
Right, and if I recall correctly, I think the last time anybody looked at that account, there was just a few $1,000s left.
Correct.
And I believe that
There's too many flaws here to pass the buck to the residents. The town allowed it, now the town has to deal with it.
I agree with you, I think it stinks. I mean,
The credit line that he got, the builder got from Hometown is just basically backing up that he's gonna pay the bill. They will allot X amount of dollars to him for each little, segment of the
of work.
promissory that they will keep handing him money to pay off what he needs to pay off. But now that it's all, well, not complete, but complete, and he's gone, the company's gone, why is it the residents' responsibility? And where's the bond money?
Because at this time today, that's the only, right now, this is what we're describing to you is the only avenue that we know how to fix this.
You talk about, 2002, project started, 2015, the top coat, so on and so forth. There should have been some sort of accountability at that time, especially, I'm sure that it wasn't any secret that the company was gonna just walk away,
Right, but
dissolve,
the-
walk away.
The
I know there's no police for this type of thing, but for the hoops and bounds that you have to go through to get a permit through the town for anything, they want all the Ts crossed, Is dotted, so on. But here, and then there's a couple other projects in town that are still hanging where they're not complete. Circle Drive, I believe, still not. And what happens? It just sits and sits and sits and hope that it's gonna go away. If I take a permit to build a house and I leave out a few things, I'm not getting occupancies. So then I can't sell it until everything is complete. So does that responsibility for completion fall on the building department? I think we need to go further and much deeper into the finances and responsibility through council before we start trying to make a plan for residents to take responsibility.
So the problem with that is that the planning board has no budget for town council. All the requests for town council's input or information has to come through the board of selectmen.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd just like to, reiterate what Steve said before, is that the avenue forward, the only one that we know of is the betterment program. So and it does fall upon the burden of the homeowners to agree to, pay for those improvements on their own with the town's assistance in terms of doing the cost estimates and hiring the contractors and that sort of thing. And then making sure that the work is completed according to specifications. So I think at this point, it's up to the homeowners to decide whether they want to go forward with that program, and if so, they need to get the 50% threshold. And then at that point, the town can proceed in terms of the betterment bylaw. So I guess I would encourage the folks here tonight to decide whether they want to do that, and if they do, the town would be willing to work with them on that program.
We'd like to know what's gonna be waived first. I would. I'd like to know what can be waived first. Because
We don't know that at this point.
I would like to know, there's huge expenses here. These aren't little expenses. They're big expenses, okay? It's no joke. So,
7 years later.
yeah. So, I don't understand why the planning board, since it was the board that accepted the plan as it is now, back then, can't now change the plan as long as it meets the requirements of the town and regulations. But there's some things, certainly, like you've already mentioned, maybe the detention pond, maybe the sidewalks. Those are two big things. But anything else that can be waived needs to be waived for the residents, if the residents decide to pick up the rest of the balance. I think it's still gonna be left with a pretty good sum of money, you know? But anything, maybe there's alternatives to the water management system instead of detention centers. You know, there's other forms of doing things instead of just having detention ponds. Anything that can be waived should be waived. You've pointed out, sir, that we should decide whether or not we're gonna do this before we understand what's gonna be waived. I wouldn't agree with that. I would say we need to know what's gonna be waived by the planning board so that then we can make an a good decision as to whether or not we wanna move forward to do that. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would say that I think you want to seriously think about going forward regardless of the waivers, what the waiver situation's gonna be. And while you're working on getting that 50%, we can continue to work on speaking as we had said we would do, speaking with conservation to see whether or not we can do anything about those detention basins.
It's kind of hard to sell something that you don't know what the cost of it is.
Well, the alternative is you do nothing, which is what's happened so far.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is it the residents' intent that these roads be accepted by the town? Or do you prefer to just let them continue as they are?
We would like to.
You'd like them accepted, okay. Mr. Wetruba has spent, I don't know how many man-hours digging into this. Now, most of us on this board, I think I'm one of the longer tenured with the exception of Mr. Horn. This Tobin Farms Estates has been on our agenda for the last 3 years, I suspect. Every meeting, we discuss this. This is the first time, perhaps, I may be mistaken, I think I missed a meeting somewhere along the way, that we've had representation from the neighbors. It's been on our agenda. Our agenda is published, it's on the website. Mr. Wetruba has spent endless hours digging into this. I take my hat off, I would have given up long before he did. Our intent is to try to get something done. Yes, all these things happened back in 2010 or 2015 or 2002. Yes, the process is not the same today. There are things that are required. There are things that we can't get around. We have to know more detail on to begin with before we even consider possibly waiving some of these things. The costs that we're talking about today are just imaginary numbers, if you will. We're trying to move this thing forward. We're trying to do something to get that town, this, if you will, subdivision as a whole accepted. I drive by there in the morning and I see the kids waiting for the school bus that doesn't go down their road. And I haven't seen it with the ice on the road yet, but I anticipate that I will in a few weeks anyway. And I understand that that's probably not something a parent wants to do, be sitting there in an idling vehicle waiting for a school bus to show up. So we're trying to do something to get that accepted, if you will. And we're hoping to do that with some input, involvement, if you will, from the residents. And I've gone on too long with this already. Thank you.
The only thing that I want to add to that is that the situation can get a lot worse. I think you all know that if Mr. Slingo decides that he's not going to plow the road for a year, you guys are going to be stuck. You're either going to be driving over snow-covered roads, or if it gets bad enough, and people call the town, then they'll send a town truck and they'll make one pass. That'll be it.
So they will plow
something?
If there was an
Public
emer-
safety.
if there was an emergency,
Because that's what I'm concerned with.
Yes.
If he walked away, he's got, you know,
yeah,
he doesn't have to show
he
up.
doesn't have to
plow.
show up,
Then
but
what
that's,
happens? People are just stuck.
yeah.
You know, public safety, the town would have to plow
The
it.
town would have to plow.
So,
The other issue you got is that your road was repaved in 2015. Right now, it's in good shape. The highway superintendent's been there, he said it all looks good. I mean, we don't know what it's gonna look like in 2 years from now, we don't know what it's gonna look like in 5 years from now. If we just do nothing, in 2 years and 5 years, the road deteriorates to the point where it needs repairs. All the information that we just gave you on the numbers, that's gonna increase, because now you gotta fix what's already been fixed. And we're trying to solve that we're trying to solve this problem before we have to take on a larger problem with the roads that are currently in good shape. I mean, subdivisions in town that have the same situation you guys are in, just because they're older. We've got Misty Meadows, we've got Partridge Hill. Take a ride up on these streets and take a look at them. They're the same situations. Letter of credit was how the subdivision was secured. There's no money in the funds. The developers are bankrupt or are deceased or gone, and people are still living there, and they're paying full taxes just like you are. I understand it. I live in a subdivision in Dudley that wasn't finished for 10 years. I used to snow blow my own road every time it snowed. Get the snow blower out at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning and snow blow to the end of the road so I could go to work, because the plow wasn't coming.
So you just let it go.
Mr. Chairman,
It just gets let go.
I mean,
Full tax, but just let the impurities disappear.
again, the other people in the other subdivisions, they're in the same situation you are, and now their situation is it's even worse, because their roads are in such poor condition, we could never accept them without totally rebuilding their roads.
not only are you not accepting them, Mr. Chairman, you're also not accepting responsibility for them being in that condition. So when the subdivision was presented and approved by the planning board, right, the governing body, and then the letter of credit was established, and in our subdivision, there are 3 lots that are owned by the person who signed the letter of credit for this subdivision. Those lots could be taken by lien to pay for this. So you put your hands up, but it's the planning board who approved the plan. I understand individually you're all indemnified, so there's no responsibility to it. It goes to the town, and then it goes to the town coffers, and however you pay those legal bills, and the town planner's aware of that entire thing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, excuse me, sir, if I may, for the record, this board did not approve that plan.
No, unfortunately, sir, you're incorrect. The planning board of
planning
Dudley.
board did.
The planning board of
Members
Dudley,
of
I'm
that
not
board
talking
are
about
not here
individuals.
this
I'm not
evening.
talking about individuals, sir. You're all indemnified, so therefore you are a planning board, you're not individuals. So this planning board, the town of Dudley's planning board, approved the subdivision. The town of Dudley's planning board is ultimately responsible for the approval of that and the conditions at the time, whether the requirements were there or not, and we know they've all changed over the years to improve. But there has to be some kind of responsibility taken by the town of Dudley and the planning board of Dudley, and not the residents. We went in, maybe blind faithfully, but understanding the process. Our job was to make sure that our house was built correct. We did the walkthrough, we paid for all of that. That was our job for our residents. Not the streets, not the detention basin, not the sidewalks, not the street signs, not the street lights, not who's gonna plow it. That's the town's job. That's the town's responsibility. Now it's put on us financially. Unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Whether it's a 2.5 override for the subdivisions that aren't approved because that planning board at that time didn't know, but it's still the town of Dudley, then that's how it's got to get done to fix or right the wrongs. But it's completely unacceptable. I understand what you're doing. You're offering us a solution and wiping your hands and walking away as a town. not individually. I understand the work you've done, sir, and it's outstanding, and I appreciate it, and we all appreciate it. But the only solution is to come back on us and say, well, you know, if you want it done, it's only gonna get worse if you don't. Nice threat, I appreciate that, you know. But it's unacceptable. There's no responsibility on the town. None at all.
Can I get your name, please?
Charles Cormier, 18 Tobin Drive. And just to go back on a lighter note, the detention basins that are there, one of them is in my backyard. I try to maintain it as much as possible because there's also no who's responsible to maintain that detention basin. But I can tell you that they're over-engineered, without a doubt. The amount of water that goes into those detention basins is nil to none. The 100-year storm we had 3 or 4 years ago, there was very little water coming out of the catch basin going into there. And there's 4 catch basins that go into the detention basin in my backyard. They are over-engineered, and I believe if the hydrology report is ever done, that the other 2 detention basins probably are not needed, because I see where the outlet is and where it goes into the stream that goes to Mosquito Pond or Hayden Pond on the opposite end of Stebbins.
Well,
So
let him speak.
I think I think there's some savings there for the town. I'm not even gonna say for us, for the home. I think there's some savings there for the town. But I think there's avenues that you can go as the planning board or the town planner to town council through the Board of Selectmen to review whether or not a lien needs to be placed on a piece of property to be able to sell that property to pay to what has to be done. But there's 3 lots up there. 2 of them are waterfront. That should more than pay for anything that's gotta be done. So as far as the plowing is concerned, I spoke to Mr. Slingo. He has no intention of plowing this year. He was told by town council that he has no responsibility to the road, that the homeowners own the road half and half, that he has no responsibility to do it, and he didn't have to do it all these years, and we appreciate him greatly doing it. But there are other towns in the Commonwealth that plow private roads because their taxpayers do it. It goes to town meeting, they are approved, they are plowed, and because it's a safety issue, we have someone in our neighborhood who has MS, and if something ever happens to her and town can't get there, I think that's a liability. You may wanna, you know, just look at what the cost might be there compared to, you know, plowing the streets. I think you'd break even, you might even make some money in that point. So I think there is things you can do, and yeah, there's things we can do, and we'll talk about it. We're a pretty close-knit neighborhood. We'll talk about what we can do, but to just say, look, we're offering you a solution, you're not offering us a solution. You're putting it on us. The solution's on us. And candidly, I think you're walking away from your responsibility. And we can go to the Board of Selectmen, we can try and get all that stuff, but the recommendation is the planning board. That's why you're here, to make recommendations to protect the homeowners of the town so that this doesn't happen. And the planning board, not you individually, the planning board of Dudley, let us and other subdivisions down. And I think you need to step up to the plate. Someone needs to right the wrong. Thank you.
And the statement being made, or have been made, that there was no money in the budget for town council to look into this. That's unexcusable, because if there was other things that required council to protect the town in some sort of fashion, they would have to, it's what they do. That's what would need to be done, correct? But because we're going the other way, the opposite way, where we're trying to get council to look into who's responsible. And the second part would be, talk about 2015, it was done, so on, you're getting estimates and so on. It's almost 2022. The estimates, you might as well just throw them away. Start all over again, or add a ton more. Everything is just gone out of sight, and construction, anything to do. And the retention pond, what was good in 2002 or 2015 surely would not be acceptable today. Even if they did do that, especially where it's going through the retention pond and then leaching out into mosquito pond.
Okay.
There's no way that would be approved today.
Mr. Chairman, we have a hard stop at 10 o'clock. We're spinning our wheels a lot. Mr. Chairman, I would recommend if anybody has anything they want to say and add to the conversation, we try to hear it real quick. I got a couple things I'd like to say at the end, but we need to.
That's fine, I get it.
Yeah, we'll be out of here, but,
I'm not trying to rush you guys, I'm just trying to let you know we can extend if you guys want, but I'd rather make good use of the time instead of hearing the same things over and over again from both sides.
Yep, that's fine. Alan Fournier from 8 Nelly's Way. I understand, where you're coming from, and I do appreciate the fact that all of you have done so much work on doing a lot of this investigation. I have friends that are part of the board, and I appreciate it. And I know that, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to try and come up with a resolution. You could just have ignored it, and we would have not known that this happened. So I do appreciate the fact that you're trying to find a resolution for this. And I did some numbers because I wanted to see what this would actually cost us. And when you say $200,000, it sounds like a lot of money. But when you divide it out by the 45 lots that are there, even at the $200,000, which we know that that is an extremely high number, because if we're not going to do the sidewalks on half of the streets in phase 2, it'll be significantly less than that. So what it ended up translating into for each individual was about $180 a year, $15 a month when you do the math, because it's about $4,500 for the 45 lots. And that's very minimal money. So, I mean, we need to make sure that, if this is our only option, at least it's not a significant impact to all the residents. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware of those situations, especially if there are some things on this that you said, Mr. Wetruba actually said that, there are some things that really aren't as necessary. So it may even be less than that if there are other items on this 9 items that we had on the list that you could take care of for us, and we would appreciate what you could do as a planning board to try and reduce some of these costs for us. Look at things that you could potentially waive beyond just that sidewalk. Things that, like the detention pond, where you're saying, those detention basins, we may be able to get away with. If you could try and get the conservation committee expert to look at this, to give us that information, so we'll know where we stand, and so we can say, hey, yeah, well, when we look at what our total cost could have been, if they're taking off 3 items off this list and what those items would cost us, it's really going to cost us next to nothing. It's very important for us to get this accepted. The consequences of not accepting this road are significant. If this road deteriorates, no one's going to want to pay to have that road done. That's the biggest cost. And so it is very important that we get this done. And I understand everybody's frustration. I understand the consequences and the potential legal action. Legal action takes a lot longer than just making this decision and getting this done, which could potentially deteriorate the road even more. My thoughts is let's get it done. And I don't know if everybody is going to be in agreement within my development, but I would rather have it done than wait longer and have potential costs rising. There were other board meetings, planning board meetings, where Mr. Slingo had attended the meetings. He had indicated that there were some items on in this meeting that he would take care of himself. The stop signs. He said he would do the stop signs. There are other various items that he said he would do. Can we hold him to that? Can we pull him back in as a board? Can you request that he come in and see if you can get a commitment from him? You said that you would do these things. Would you be willing to do them? He's not a bad guy. Maybe he'll do it. If he has the stop signs, maybe he'll put them in. That's a piece of cost that we don't have to incur. If he has some of these items and he could do it, he might do it. And I think, as a board, it could be something that you could potentially explore to see if you could help us with reducing our costs. Those are kind of the items that I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to make sure. I know you're on our side, and I know you're trying to do what you can to help us. So if you could look at these items and give us some more information down the road and let us know, will he accept some of the things that he said he would do? What items can we get off this list? And give us a final cost. I think once we look at what all the numbers will be and the impact to our development, we might have a different perspective.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. I also live on a private road, not accepted yet. I want my street accepted as well because I want the thing plowed. I mean, I got a kid goes to school, he's got to catch the bus at the end of the street as well. It's not that far of a walk, but still, it's a safety issue, especially when cars come rolling down the hill way too fast. I know if my street were it was to cost me thousands of dollars, I wouldn't be pleased. I know that if it was going to cost me $10, I would say, what the hell, get it taken care of real quick. So obviously, there's going to be this is about money, but also about principle. There's some kind of a price point where people would say, let's just get it taken care of, and there's a price point where people are going to say, there's a principle involved here. I don't know what the majority of your subdivision is going to be. Of course, it depends on cost, it depends on what can and can't be waived. A good point was made about responsibility. At the Board of Selectmen meeting a couple weeks ago, when we had this basic conversation, a couple of people, I think they lived on Misty Meadows, made some good points about not the legal definition of what a private road is, but what they felt the definition of a private road was, and they were putting responsibility in their minds on the town itself. I think that what is being presented here is one avenue of approach, and it's one of the legal ways that is open to the planning board, or the planning board of the town itself can recommend. We have bylaws, there are rules and regulations what the town can spend for and can't spend for. But just because this is one avenue approach doesn't mean it's the only avenue approach. As a resident of Dudley, and my street being private, we're talking about $200,000, and there's roughly 3,000 residents or 3,000 households in Dudley. That's $70 a household. I would gladly pay the $70, have everybody else in town pay for my street, we're all good to go. I don't know what the rest of the town in Dudley is going to feel. I know that we have a number of these streets that are on our list, a number of residences. We're starting here. If the residents here in Tobin Farms say, we don't want this, it's as much as principle as money, the residents of Tobin Farms could theoretically go to the next one, to Misty Meadows, to the other, and at some point in time, with or without legal help, start talking to the town. What responsibility does the town have? I'm not a legal expert. I don't want to be saying bad things about the town because obviously I'm volunteering to serve the town, but that also means serving the residents. And I mean, these things go on for 20 years. I don't know who is legally responsible, how we can get legal responsibility. The fact that the gentleman owns a couple lots here that could be used to get some kind of finances or some kind of form of financing to fix this problem is a good one. That's a place to start, obviously. But I think that if you all went out to your neighbors and everybody else in the subdivision and tried to get a general direction, and if there's a principle involved as well as anything else, I'm sure that feeling is going to be found within other subdivisions, and that there's going to be some kind of a method to get this resolved.
25.
If that makes sense.
I think that instead of spinning our wheels, I think we should, how would we take the next step and get hard numbers? Because as you said, there's going to be a point where maybe the cost will be at such a low point that it's going to be irrelevant to my neighbors and me. And
Any site contractor should be able to give you numbers, and most of them will do.
Who's getting these numbers?
That's a good question.
I mean, what's the next step here?
Mr. Chairman, defer to the town planner to explain the process of exactly how we go about. My understanding is the petition first, and then the town. Go ahead.
Well, the way that I would look at the bylaw is that there's probably a two-step process. One, in order for the town to engage in this process, we'd like to know that the residents are interested in pursuing this option. So that's where that 50% threshold comes in. If you can get us that petition that shows
Do
you.
you know of anybody who's not interested in having this be a town road?
Well, we need official agreement.
I understand that, but everybody, it's a pretty common
Right. So,
thing that we'd like.
so what I think would happen then is that we would go to the selectmen and say, okay, we want to have our town engineer, our engineering consultant, prepare the cost estimate for this, to complete the subdivision. At that point, the planning board could decide which items it wanted to waive, and then we could subtract those items from the engineer's estimate. And then I think we would need, the official support of the residents to proceed, and that would sort of lock in the project to go forward. What happens then is that the town would appropriate the money based upon the final, or the estimate that we have for the work, and the town would proceed to do the work, and then at the end, it would issue the betterments to the homeowners based upon the actual final cost of the work. So I think that's how the process would go. I would, so if you can get us that 50% number, I think we'd go to the selectmen and say we need a couple $1,000 to hire the engineer to prepare this estimate for us.
Yeah,
And hopefully.
Start,
Another place might be that we're.
hard numbers,
Jeff, did you have?
Board of Selectmen's meeting, there was a discussion, suggestion was brought up to form a committee. Maybe have a couple of people from the planning board, from different boards, from different residents, to have a committee come together to kind of investigate not only each subdivision that's not been accepted as a single entity, but also as a whole picture. And if something like that could or could not start, that might be a place where we could start getting estimates, start seeing overall costs, not just for one subdivision, for all of them, for example.
One of the last things that one of the selectmen said to some of the people that were there that night, I remember, told them, go out, get started on the petition. Don't wait. Start now. Start talking to your neighbors now. I mean, I'm looking at how many people are out here right now. There's far less than half of you here. But some of you are gonna see the meeting some of your neighbors are gonna see this meeting on video, on YouTube, and they can check it out
Doesn't
there.
sound like it's gonna be that tough to obtain.
Shouldn't.
Petition, so.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I think came out of that, Mr. Edmiston is correct, the mention was made of a committee, but I think one of the reasons for the creation or the committee thought, was that each of these individual situations, there are characteristics that are not common to all. So each one of them would have to be dealt with as its own specific concern or specific issues that pertain to it. Obviously, you folks, if you will, are the guinea pigs. You're kind of the first step into this process, if you will. So it's a feeling out process. Obviously, as I think you probably have witnessed, we don't have any final answer for you tonight. And I think the chairman mentioned at the beginning that we probably would not have any final resolutions coming out of this evening's meeting. We're looking for your input, we've got your input, and I think we need to go forward with it. And it sounds like a lot of our going forward with it relates back to the Board of Selectmen in terms of getting some approval or some funding available from them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't see the entire Board of Selectmen meeting. I started to watch it, but I didn't have time to watch the entire thing. But these people here, these homeowners here, if they got the 50% and they filed the petition, they're under no obligation to go through with this.
That's correct.
No.
Right?
No.
This is just so you want hard numbers, this is how you're gonna get hard numbers. You gotta go partway down the road, and then you're gonna come to a why. Do you wanna go, or do you don't wanna go? And you get those hard numbers when you get to the why in the road.
Mr. Chairman, if I remember, and please correct me if someone saw that it remembers differently, I believe the town manager rather, did mention that the petition could be withdrawn.
Yes.
Without
It's not
objection.
obvious, yeah.
Well, and there's a plan, that's the next step.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the planner, just for clarification for the homeowners, typically with a betterment, the way it would work, if you, usually those are used for installations of utilities or something like that. And what would happen is you have residents on both sides of the road. So you take a center line measurement, half of that distance, and then, or half of the frontage distance of the lot, and that would be what would be assessed. Is this split split up between the 45 homes or the 45 lots, or would it be a frontage measurement and portion amount?
Well, we looked at the bylaw,
You know how the
and
bylaw-
I interpret it as being, once the cost is known and the work is done, it's based on a per lot basis, not a linear frontage.
Clarify that so that they know if they're, and they wouldn't be disenchanted if it were.
Right.
based
If
on-
I have a copy of the bylaw, I could give it to you. You could read it yourself and see what you come up with, because we were going back and forth on this. I mean, the only thing that appears clear is that they go by the lineal feet of frontage on the road, that you need at least 50% of that lineal feet of frontage, the owners of 50% or more of that lineal feet of frontage to sign petitions in order to move the process forward. Then there's more legal language that gets a little bit more confusing, that seems to indicate to me that unlike a betterment for sewer lines that are put in the road where they charge you by the lineal foot, which is what I went through on my street, that instead they actually break it up by lot.
So everybody would pay the same per lot.
That's what it appears to me.
Yes.
The other thing I would say to you is, like, the highway superintendent just brought about, that these betterments are not uncommon for towns to do when they have to install sewer lines or water lines or something like that into your property. And the other thing to remember is that, if you do get a betterment, and you are spreading this money out over 25 years, if you sell your home, in some cases, you don't have to pay that entire betterment off. You can pass that along with the next homeowner would pay for it. I mean, if you live in this house for 10 years, you'd pay for your 10 years that you lived there. The next homeowner buys your home, he could pay, if he lives there 15 years, he would pay the last 15 years off.
Well, nobody likes to buy a house with a betterment in place, you know?
But there's a
But
lot of.
nobody likes to buy a house on a street that's falling apart.
Yeah, that's true too.
And the school bus can't come pick up your kids, and you're not sure if you're gonna get plowed. So that's another thing to think about. It affects your property value.
Well, the school bus doesn't come down my street either, and it's a public way, so there's no guarantee that the bus company might not still,
John, we have to disclose that?
Yeah, you're gonna disclose that assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight, and like I said, we can't solve all the problems this evening, but we wanted to let you know what the situation was, you know, and what this one avenue that's here for you that you could try. You know, if I was in your situation, I wouldn't be happy with having to pay any more money. I can totally relate to that, because like I said, I was in the same situation you were for 10 years. And what I can tell you is that I would take the avenue and explore it just to see where it gets me. I mean, if it is too much money, then so be it. You can't do it. And then that's when we go back to the Board of Selectmen and say, we gotta see if there's another way we can do this. Because otherwise, if we just let it go, in 10 years, your road's gonna be in a situation like Misty Meadows Estates or the Partridge Hill Road. And I mean, once you get to that kind of situation, you know, now you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to rebuild the road on top of that.
I think once there's an actual amount, that'll help.
Right.
I think we're gonna get there, you know, I think that's not gonna be hard.
Okay,
Okay, so I would say, plan on having that done.
all right.
Having us get that done.
And we'll help you as much as we can.
All right, thanks, guys, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And for those who aren't here, maybe you could mention that this meeting is videoed, and perhaps they could be at another meeting coming up. As well. I'm sure they'll be here.
What are you doing here?
What's that?
It's about disclosure. Now you can't.
I know, yeah. Now I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've sold a few to them, and I had to sell them on, well, they've always maintained plowing it.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion and we adjourn.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Second? All in favor?
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday, everybody.
Night.